this time. I'm actually going to press the go live button this time, and and hopefully we actually go live this time. So let us know in the chat if we're actually live, because I may have just boomered that again. I'm just terrible at technology. I should not be in charge. We should get somebody else doing this.
Yeah, okay, now we are, I think. Yeah, I can see
Okay,
it.
great.
Yeah.
How you doing, everybody on YouTube? Welcome to the Stormkeep Live. My name is Paul, and today with me we have Mergonk, who is hiding his face for a little while, maybe. We'll see if he decides to show. And then I think we're also waiting on a couple people who are just running late, so they'll just probably pop in randomly at some point while we're talking.
Mm-hmm.
So today we are going to be talking about 3rd edition as a whole. Looking back, like in a retrospective, what did we like about 3rd edition? What did we not like about 3rd edition? I think there's going to be a lot of comparisons to 1st and 2nd edition. I think 2nd edition had a lot of problems that 3rd edition fixed, but I think in doing so, it has created new problems that has made the game... this is going to be the hottest take, I think, of the whole evening. I think 3rd edition is less fun than 1st edition. And that's a terrible take, I know, but I'll have to explain that over time, and hopefully I can make a good case for it. Because
No, I disagree. I think it's more fun. I mean, it's less crazy. I mean, it depends on like how crazy versus crazy to fun ratio you have, because like in 1st edition you could do some crazy things, but that doesn't necessarily mean they were fun when I was doing them to my opponent.
like
But you know.
summoning horrors that summon horrors that summon horrors that summon horrors.
Yeah, or like, Fire Slayers have that stupid Volkite Berserkers like determining the turn order or something.
Oh yeah, where Fire Slayers actually did significant shooting damage with their axes because of that battalion.
Yes. Yeah, before they switched the power or the Hearthguard, like, and it's like if you had like the number of units you had, you added to your dice roll for your priority roll. So you would always
Yeah,
just like roll a 6 no matter what. It's
yeah,
like cool.
and that's even after they got rid of all the weird stuff, like if you're playing Cetra and you kneel, you just lose the game, right? Like,
Oh yeah.
but 1st edition was whack. There was like a 0 edition, which was before the first General's Handbook, and then 1st edition, which we could call that after the General's Handbook. And then 2nd edition was like, so they actually released battle tomes for every army, which was cool. But they were just busted, right? It was like the power creep in 3rd edition is nothing compared to what we saw in 2nd edition. The difference in armies back then was so massive. It was crazy.
Yeah, and like it normally just came down to like nowadays it's like this army dominates a certain aspect of the meta, but and like gets you see like 2 months of it, but that back then the updates were so rare. Like you would see the same army top tables for a year solid, and it was a mechanic nobody could deal with. Like literally, like they would design things that what you could not deal with from an army perspective.
Yeah, like
Like Bristlegore always fighting first. It's like how do you deal with that if Age of Sigmar is primarily a combat game? You can't.
yeah, there were no secondary objectives to even try to pull ahead on.
Hmm.
I remember there was one game I saw somebody was playing Iron Jaws into Fire Slayers, and it's like you literally can't win as the Iron Jaws
Yeah.
player. There's literally nothing you can do.
Yeah.
You just lose every time.
Yeah. It's like he'll just fight first, and you're dead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, even if you charge in multiple units, that army was also crazy durable back then too.
Hmm.
But then
Yeah, you could stack to like a 3-up save, and you could do some crazy
with a
war moves.
reroll,
So
remember there were
yeah,
rerolls
yeah,
back
yeah.
then.
Oh yeah, there was so many rerolls, and I hated that. It's like,
Oh, it was
yeah, I'm
silly.
glad the rerolls are gone.
I am and I'm not. I feel like they could come back in a limited way, but we'll talk about that later.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I like what 40k is doing with rerolls. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, I've been kind of dabbling in 40k a little bit, just looking at the rules and kind of looking at army identity. And the armies that have rerolls feel like they should have rerolls, like they're these elite,
Yeah,
highly
like I think
accurate
out the
things.
moment, the Space Marine rule,
Yep.
out the moment, where they select a target at the start of the battle round and they reroll hits against it. I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Now I don't know everything, but like it makes sense to me that Space Marines would reroll, while Imperial Guard would not. I don't know if they do, but like,
yes,
I'm just saying it kind of makes sense.
No, they probably do, but it's like they have to take a specific detachment or enhancement, and it's usually like for the vehicle, like you can reroll one hit or one
Okay.
wound or something like that.
Okay, so like
But
Celestial
most
War
of the
Raiders.
rerolls, I think, is for more elite factions. I think.
Right.
like Custodes had like a lot of wound rerolls, for instance, on especially on because they hit on twos, so it doesn't matter.
Right, right.
So
I wouldn't mind if rerolls came back in a limited capacity. Like I was playing against Hollowmorn today, and it just felt cool to reroll wound rolls of one. You know, like that just
mm.
felt cool to experience. Connor Stevens in the chat says, "I put third edition as S tier because it's the only edition I've played." That's a fair argument. You know, if this is all you've ever known, it could be the best. Could be the best game you've ever played. So it's also the worst. But I guess D tier and F tier aren't options, so by process of elimination, it would have to be S tier, right?
No, I
Nathan's.
think A is fine. It's probably like in terms of them caring about the rules because the fact that they publicly state that they care now is a huge difference from what their attitude used to be. Because their attitude
Yeah,
was this is primarily a model based game. It's not competitive. You had like Ben Johnson and like I can't remember the other person's name, the other games designer. Like they didn't even understand what the point of competitive play was. They thought it was okay for an opponent to just have a really bad time while you wrecked them and they couldn't do anything. So they've come a long way from that perspective because they've realized that yeah, there is a tournament scene and people don't just like seeing the same army win the top table over and over. Uh, that alone, the fact that they're willing to design the game in such a way makes it sort of better for me.
now, the cynical side of me would say the only reason they do that is because they know that bad publicity through word of mouth is not good for sales. But even if that's true, the game is getting better with more frequent updates, and they actually seem to be listening to the community, and not only listening to the community, which is actually another important thing. Is like they're the game designers; they have a better vision than every other person, right? It's their game; they should
Yes.
do what they want. And if, as long as they're incentivized to make the game better, then it seems to be working fine. So even if my cynical take is correct, even in that scenario, as long as the game's getting better, is there really much to complain about? I don't think so. Right? Good
No.
models, game's getting better. Hey, what's up, John?
Yeah, I think there's a discussion when people talk about competitive gaming, like with Counter Strike or Halo or whatever. It's like the environment designers should not listen to necessarily competitive players to make that environment fun.
Yeah.
There is an element because competitive players, especially like pro players, look for consistency of input to consistency of output, and they want to make things as predictable and non-interactive as possible in order for
Yes,
their
that's
performance to be
certainly
good.
what I prefer. Is I prefer as few dice rolls as possible.
Yes.
If I
So,
was
but
designing this
that
game,
doesn't necessarily mean they should do it because
yes,
RNG and unpredictability is a huge part of having the game be fun and having as a spectator game, as people looking onto the game, a huge part of making their experience enjoyable is watching us struggle with the environment.
yes, you have to design a game that gives the players friction against the game itself.
Hmm.
Otherwise, it's just not that engaging. Hey,
Hmm.
John, I think it's the first time people have seen you on
Hey, how you
camera.
guys doing? Oh
Hey,
yeah?
hey. It's been a while since I've
Yeah.
seen his face. It was a year ago, I
Yeah.
think. Saw him last.
Yeah, actually at Nova or not Nova at
No,
LVO.
LVO. Like, yeah, so
Yeah,
I
yeah,
guess in
yeah.
2 months we'll see, right?
We'll
So,
see each other again.
yeah.
Right on. So I think Jack is on his way whenever Windows finishes updating. So before
Oh
we
God,
get
was
into
it one of those like surprise automatic
guess
updates?
what, you're updating.
Oh
One
my
of those.
God.
John, what do you think about third edition overall? What's your initial take on it?
Well, like as you know, or you guys might know, like this was my first edition, so I come in with a very interesting take. I get to hear all the stories about like what things were like before. It sounds like it was much more chaotic in first, and then in second it started to get a little bit better, but the balance was pretty crazy and pretty skewed. And then yeah, I don't know what I experienced was um, I'd say like really intense from the side of like a new player to like tabletop gaming. Like I had never played any of Warhammer in my life. So that was like quite a big thing to sort of get onto. But
You've picked it up very
generally,
quickly, so kudos for that.
yeah, it's been great. I've been surrounding myself with a lot of people that play a lot and like following this channel and getting to know you guys a little bit. Like that's been super helpful. But I think like people seem relatively happy with the addition. At least people I spoke to that have been playing for longer. Obviously, there were issues, and there's constantly problems and rules that need like should never come out. But like
Yeah.
if I were to have averaged that out from an observer point of view, like it seemed like it was pretty decent. It seems like it's been pretty good. And I think ending with this last GHB being the year long and being like pretty decent compared to some of the things that they had in the earlier ones that were like a bit tilted. Now that they fixed Blizzard, of course, and the rupture.
You say fix, I say
think now we're
ruined.
pretty good.
I think they've
No,
ruined
no, they
Blizzard.
fixed it. Let's be honest. Teleport Blizzard was awful, but honestly, like I think I'm gonna agree with Corbs here, and I'm actually kind of excited for this year's LVO because for the last two LVOs since this edition has come out, the tournament has been won by second edition army playing in third edition with some broken rules.
Yeah, that's true.
2021, when I first attended LVO at our newest shiny Stormcast home back in the day, it was Cities of Sigmar that won LVO with a bunch of Tempesters and crossbows.
Yeah, it was really Stormcast.
It was it was dragons, Tempesters, and crossbows, right? The second year after that I went to LVO, it was Beasts of Chaos that won. This was when they were dirt cheap. Right. They were summoning meat out the butt, and nobody could deal with that much meat on the board at the time.
Yeah.
So this is the first time we'll be going where every book, well, maybe Flesh Eater Courts won't be out in time. We'll see, but every book except them will be on the stage, and so it'll be nice to see. You know.
I just hope Flesh Eaters wins now, just because you said that whole thing. I hope
they had a little glow up, a little touch.
I mean, they're kind of good now.
They're very good.
There's some things they can't win against, but 9 Crypt Horrors with supported properly with heroes is a nightmare for some.
I hope Jake's watching because I was just talking to Jake about this today, and like 2x6 horrors is probably better than the 9. The 9 block's too greedy, but anyway.
Sure.
Jack, welcome. How you doing, buddy? Is your computer all updated?
Yeah. It's what happens when you don't use your computer for like 2.5 weeks.
Fantastic. So it's good to have you back on the stream. It's been a while. What do you think about third edition? What's your first take?
I love it.
Okay. What do you love about it?
The game is more dynamic. It's more interactive. There's a lot more decision making that goes on. I think that this is the first time in the almost 30 years I've been playing Warhammer that tactical decisions in the game really matter. There are a lot of elements that they have incorporated into the game that I think are excellent conceptually. I think GW has struggled to really implement them well. But I like the direction that it's gone, and I hope that we don't backpedal.
Okay. It sounds like you think there's a lot of room for improvement too, because you're talking about direction rather than just where we're currently at.
Yeah, I do.
Things could always be better, but haven't played this in second edition. It really is it's a really much more enjoyable game than it was for me when I was playing Stormcast in 2019. I'll tell you that.
I think the biggest thing for me is that even just a few months ago, it wouldn't be unreasonable to think that third edition would have been ruined forever because of the early 2023 battle tomes, right? From Gits until even Cities. I think Cities is pretty cracked. All the battle tones since then have been just a step above the other ones. Yes. And it made the game feel awful. It made you feel like you are playing an overpowered army, which is not fun to play with or against. I think in my there's a certain level of fun in being overpowered, but the point is you want to play fun games with people, and if you're playing an overpowered army, your opponent's not having fun. I don't know. I wouldn't have fun with that.
Well, the good news is it wasn't just one book, right? It was 6 books, so if they all played against each other, it felt fair. Otherwise, no.
Yeah, but so it could have been, and I think it would have been a reasonable thing to say, okay, this edition's dead. There's no way they can actually fix it. There's no will that they would fix it, right? Because historically, Games Workshop hasn't done a good job at balancing from that kind of extreme point. But they have clawed it back, and third edition today, after the recent battle scroll, feels really good. The delta between the worst army in the game, aside from Bow Splitters, but the worst non-Bone Splitter army and the best army in the game, it still comes down to player skill, right? So that feels really good. No, I think it's totally true. Like, unless you're playing Bone Splitters, which just have they're not even that bad. Like, I'm kind of just joking about that, but like, they're not that far apart. Like, Nurgle right now is one of the top armies based on the stats that we're seeing, and they were basically a dumpster tier army 3 months ago, right?
A
Like,
lot of that 6 months ago. Yeah.
yeah. Stormcast were literally the worst army in the game, and now there's an argument to say that we're like top 10, maybe even top 5, depending on the players, right, and the local meta. So they have really pulled it back out of that nosedive that the game was in. So I think that's probably my favorite thing so far, is that I legit thought I was going to just stop playing this game until the next edition came out, but they have revitalized it.
Yeah, it gives you some hope that they are looking at the right things. They like sort of at least have a grasp on like what's going on. There are things that are missing, that's fine, but they have a general grasp on like
Yeah.
where each faction is sort of lacking in what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Like if they are lacking, and if a faction is really strong, why it's really strong. Like I can't believe this. Like we said on stream, we were like, if they nerf zombies, they're gonna have to nerf direwolves and skeletons too, because otherwise people just switch to the next
Yeah.
available summonable
Just
unit.
hop over instantly.
Yeah, and they instantly did. Skeletons
Yeah.
went up 10 points, direwolves went up 10 points. Like
They designed that book to have 3 units that did the exact same thing conceptually. So you just take
Yeah.
whichever one's the most efficient.
yeah.
Yeah, that we'll talk about army design later. There's a whole thing about it. Okay, so
All right.
we got the whole gang here. Let's give a quick shout out to our sponsor, Kaiju Gaming Lounge. They are awesome dudes based in Florida. If you want to order Warhammer, you can do it through them. They offer 15% off if you use code Stormkeep. They do international shipping. You just have to message them on Discord. You can tag Carl, and he will get you set up with that. They are also the guys who help us sell our merch. So we have some Stormkeep dice. They're fancy, and today they were rolling really well for me. But I swear that's not normal. They're just regular dice in every way. They also manufacture and sell these fancy 3D printed rangefinders. So if you're playing Annihilators right now, which I know a lot of people are, or Questers are another good option if you're using 7-inch drops, then these fancy 7-inch range sticks are really cool. So if you want to support the show, or if you just want some cool swag, then hit up kaijugaminglounge.com. And yeah, thanks guys for sponsoring the show. We're really appreciative because you let us have fancy prizes for our painting contest. And that's going to bring us nicely into our painting contest. So in October, we were painting Warbands because the Questers had come out fairly recently. I thought enough time had passed and enough balance changes happened that people got very excited about using Questers. But I thought that just having new units as the painting subject might not be enough. Like people don't always just buy the newest, fanciest models. They're not whales like we are. So I thought, what if we expanded it to, and this was actually a suggestion from the Discord server, to have just all Stormcast Warbands between Underworlds and Warcry. So this includes, God, let's see if we can name them all. It started out with Steelheart's Champions, and then we got, what's the name of the Knight and Cantor Warband? Oh gosh, it's right here on the screen.
Curse Breakers.
Curse Breakers. Curse Breakers,
Oh, no.
yep. Then we got we got Far Striders. We got Iron Souls Condemners. Those are the Sequitors.
Sequitors and Castigators.
What are the Castigators called? Oh gosh, I have them painted. Something.
I think it's called.
It's embarrassing. I don't remember. It's fine. Moving on. We know they exist. Then there's like a whole bunch of Thunderstrike ones too, right? We've got Xandir's Truthseekers, Domoten's Storm Coven, and then the Quester Soulsworn are the only one for Warcry. So all of these were fair game for this contest, and we picked our 3 favorites from all of these different selections. Oh, thanks, Eric. I appreciate that. I wish I painted capes that well all the time. These guys seem to be an anomaly in my painting.
Cool.
Yeah, so we picked our favorites for whatever reason we like them. That's how we pick things. We're not only judging based off technical merit. It could be style. It could be a cool kit bash. It could just be a really good photo. Like, our judging criteria is not
entirely subjective. It's entirely subjective.
100%. It's 100% subjective. So, but all the entries were fantastic. I loved seeing the just massive variety of color schemes that people have. This contest, more than all the others we've done, really showed how many different color schemes you can do for Stormcast. Like, we've done a lot of different contests, and there's been a lot of anvils, a lot of hammers. there's been some custom schemes here and there, but like there was almost nothing from the standard schemes. Like there's very few gold and blue in this. Some people even had like different colors for each quester, and I thought that was really cool because kind of the lore supports that, right? They're like pulled together from different storm hosts. So this was a really fun one to judge. If you want to see all the entries before we go into the winners, you can just jump in the Discord server and you can check out the Painting Warbands channel. All the entries are pinned, so you can just easily scroll through them and take a look at all of them. Our winners today are going to get their choice of Stormdrake Guard, Vigilors, or a pack of dice and rangefinders that we were just talking about before. Okay.
Yo, Vigilors. They're going to get hot, guys. Get ready.
They have to be good.
I got a list with them right now.
Like, there's no way they go 2 editions to have new models be bad, right? Like, they have to be good in 4th edition. So
the models are amazing.
They are. They're really nice.
At 150 points, like, well, we'll talk about it.
Okay, so let's jump into our honorable mentions. Shut off this, and let's go. So our first 2 honorable mentions here are from Kriegschneck. I think I got that right. I'm not German, but I think I got it right. Kriegschneck has this really cool scheme for his Stormcast where they're like molten, almost like they just walked out of a forge, or maybe they're playing on some kind of realm that's just so hot, like everything is just burning to the touch. And it looks really awesome. Even the bird is made of like fire, which is a nice touch. He's got this like searing hot bird going on here. Really cool style. The fact that he also integrates it into the bases, like even the cobblestone underneath it, like it looks like it's red hot, so it makes me think he's got like a whole themed army where they're like fighting inside a forge world or something. It looks cool. It's a really cool look, and it's done very well.
Yeah. It's sort of like the old like Balrog kind of painting approach. Or some people have done that with Angron recently, but you start with white, then yellow, then orange, then red, then almost like a black, and you just build up from the heat emitting from the sort of crevices of the model. It's really nice.
Yeah, most conventional painting techniques are dark first, and then you build up light on top of that. And this one's just the opposite, and it looks really striking. I also like that you can tell there's different types of metal because the colors are ever so slightly different on like the chainmail skirt, I guess you can call it.
Yeah, it's reflecting the like light and infrared differently with each surface of the metal.
Mm-hmm. It's really well done. I love your style, Kriegschneck, so keep them coming. Don't stop, please. The other honorable mention here on this page is from EdomH22. And I love these models, but I gotta say, I wish he took some better photos because
it's too dark.
Yeah, it's a little too dark. When you have black bases, you don't necessarily want to have a completely black background, or maybe even consider having like a mirrored surface, like a glass panel underneath it, so that way it reflects so you can see the edges. But in these photos, they're very, very dark. But I really appreciate this paint job because Xandir looks fantastic here with her lantern. The bird looks awesome. I just love that color scheme, the white and the 2 shades of blue there. It all just looks great. I really like it. This kind of brassy Stormcast metal we don't see all the time. It's usually like golds and silvers or like non-metallic colors. Brass it's pretty dang cool.
Yeah, it looks great. Love these.
Okay, on to our next honorable mentions. No stranger to the show, we've got Andreas SCE with his very cool, what would you even call this? Like navy blue with white and black weapons. I don't even know what to call this color scheme, but he posts it all the time and it always looks good, and I'm always excited to see it. It's very technically well done, very sharp highlights. Like he's got these tiny little points on the edges here that I guess I need a thinner brush. Like it just makes me think that. He does this really nice non-metallic metal, and he just puts it everywhere on the models. You can even see the little rock underneath Farstrider's foot there in the middle. Even that has non-metallic metal, and it looks like it's reflecting properly. And it's got the
that's non-metallic metal?
Yes.
Yeah. What? Oh my god.
It's wild.
Okay.
Yeah, all of his metal is non-metallic.
Oh my god.
Yeah, and he's got
seen that before.
He's got like porcelain weapons, which look just very striking, like the saber there on I don't remember the name of the characters. I just remember Farstrider. The guy on the
Yeah,
left there has got a
it's-
porcelain
it's
saber.
fine.
It's cool.
Yeah.
The pelts are good. They look nice and crisp. The leather what would you call that? Straps, loincloth, whatever. Those all look really crisp. Just
The tabard. Oh, no,
yeah,
that's-
yeah. And then on the back too, you can see on Farstrider he's got some back there too, and it's all just really well done technically. Very, very nice work here. And then going for a different style and color scheme entirely, we've got Delmore de Toro with beautiful jade weapons. I'm so jealous of this effect. I need to try to replicate it at some point because those weapons are just amazing. Very unique color scheme too. He's got this like sky blue, kind of washed sky blue. He's got scratch marks all over it. It's such a unique scheme, and the weapons are so beautiful. And yeah,
Yeah, it reminded me of the Necron phase blades that I
Yeah.
paint for my Necron army.
Yeah.
It's pretty nice.
yeah. I want to know if this was done with a brush or with an airbrush because I think this looks better than a
I'd
lot
say
of Games
brush.
Workshop.
This is brush.
That's brushwork.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
that's just
Yeah.
like
That's
thin
brushwork.
glazing and then
Yeah, it's
highlighting.
glazed.
Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah.
it's glazed.
I would love to know the process on this, Delmore. So if you're watching, please let us know. I'm very curious to know what you did here. Because I've tried doing this with a brush before on some Necrons, and it didn't turn out nearly as smooth as this. It's not bad. It's just, it's not this good, obviously.
Yeah.
Oh
it's
yeah, I
tough.
mean, they clearly know what they're doing.
Nice. It looks really nice.
I got a bunch of Necrons within reach, but I don't want to pull them out to compare to this right now.
Am I crazy? Is that? Oh, no, that's True Metal, right? On the gold, that's True Metal.
On which one? The
Like,
Del Toros?
all the gold. Yeah.
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
Yeah. You
probably.
mean like the trims and everything?
Yeah. It does look like True Gold. Okay.
It looks like Retributor or something.
Yeah, Retributor with the.
'Cause it's that darker, kind of thicker
Mm-hmm.
gold.
And I don't know if you
Really
guys noticed
yellow.
this, but there's like a nice shading effect on the bases. So like the back side of the base is way darker than the front, and it's very stark. It's a
Oh.
very stark contrast. So excellent work. Really, really
Interesting.
happy to see that.
Yeah.
Okay, moving into our third place, we have Trishula, who is one of the oldest people in the server. Just awesome. With these gorgeous flaming molten weapons on muted color scheme, which just looks fantastic, especially with the black background here. But it's not so black that you can't see the bases anymore. And that, I think, is what makes a big difference. It looks like these weapons are lighting up the scene, and that's awesome. Just fantastic.
Yeah, I had to look twice at this when I was looking at it and studying it, and I was like, oh, that's really cool. And then I was about to pass, and I was like, wait, like the object source lighting effect that's been put onto the models, like around their head and shoulders, is also multicolored.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
And
really
that
good.
really stood out to me. I was like, yo, that's next level. That's
Yeah.
really nice.
Yeah.
Take a
I'm
look.
super jealous because every time I try OSO, it just looks like a mess, and I paint over it.
Yeah.
There's also some nice OSL lighting done on the Quester Prime's lantern. You can see there's like a green effect there.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
lot more subtle. But in particular, I want to point out two of these models that I really liked. It's the Quester, the middle left or middle right, and the two middle right ones, basically. So you can see the chick with the two swords.
The duelist.
Yep. You can see that the lighting effect is just on the top half of her model. Underneath the blade, it's darkened, like just based on where the blade is positioned. So a lot of thought definitely went into that. And same with the hammer on the guy on the right, or I don't remember if that's a male or female one. Whatever. The Quester on the right with the hammer, that is just lighting up the top of the fist, and the bottom is untouched. Like a lot of care went into making sure that this source lighting stopped at where it should stop, physically. And that's
Not only
just
that,
awesome.
but like notice how their source lighting is also based on how much mass of the weapon is lighting up
Right.
the armor. Like the hammer has a really heavy glow, but something like that sword has
Yes.
like a really light glow.
Yeah.
You know?
And the
Yeah.
pole arm almost no glow because it's
Yeah.
it's so thin, so it doesn't have as much mass. Yeah.
Yeah.
The cloaks look really good too.
Mhm.
You can see like little stitching has been put onto them, and that looks really nice. Makes it look like
Yeah. It's like they're adventuring in the wild and
Mhm.
patching up their equipment.
Really nice work, Trish.
Yeah, this is really really cool.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Great.
All right, second place, we have a former winner from a painting contest. We have Vorted with, again, beautifully painted. He's got this like neon kind of scheme going on here. Like it's like somebody painted Stormcast in the 80s. Like it just, it's very, very well done. All the metal is non-metallic metal and it's shaded appropriately. All the weapons look so crisp and just smooth, almost like they're made of liquid. The shading effects on like the Relictor hammer here, I pointed out in particular. You'll notice all the armor plating is done in the same style as the weapons. Just makes me feel so inferior.
Yeah, the color palette is fascinating. I'm pretty sure, like, yeah, this is the one we're talking about where like I feel like they're from different Stormhosts. We see some Celestial Vindicators, like a Hallowed Knight in there, maybe an Astral Templar in there. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, just like what do you even say? This is like just the lighting and the glazing this takes, plus the effort on the base. Like, oh, it's so good.
I love the pose on the guy with the two-handed sword. Like that's a
Mhm.
sweet kit and bash. Being able to put him like one leg raised up like that. I like that the gold ties them all together, despite being from different storm hosts with different colored armor. Having the same color weapons and gold brings that all together as a common element, and that keeps this consistent, which is really good.
Yeah.
And the cloaks too, very subtle. I go for a lot sharper highlights on mine. And the Madman even put like freehand inner lining onto the cloaks with different colors based on the storm host.
Oh god. Oh, I didn't even see that. Oh.
Yeah.
Goodness. That's impressive. That's really good.
There's like little hatching on all the gladii.
Mm-hmm.
On all the scabbards there. Every single one of them has a little bit of hatching built onto it. Just fantastic, Vorted. You knocked it out of the park, man.
I want to see like his whole army.
Dude, look through our painting contest results. You'll see him posting in there. He does phenomenal work.
It's incredible.
And it's like this vaporwave kind of style too. It's so cool.
Mm-hmm.
Makes me want to go watch Moonbeam City.
I don't know what that is.
It's okay, nobody does.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's an anime. Or like it's an animation.
Sounds like an anime.
It's like a Futurama type animation. It's got Rob Lowe and like
Elizabeth Banks, Paul, Will Forte. It's got a lot
Kate
of
Mara's in it. Yeah.
It's pretty good. Anyway.
It's all like rotoscoped, isn't it? It's like super old.
It's got that like Miami Vice kind of.
Imagine if Archer was set in the 80s and it like really made fun of the 80s. Like it's like a hyper parody of the 80s. It's great.
Nice.
Anyway, first place is ymh.fr. I don't know any other way to pronounce that. This guy's been in White Dwarf before. Like his Mega Gargants with this kind of style have been in White Dwarf, and that's no surprise. Phenomenal painter. He goes like to extreme levels of detail, completely unnecessary but gorgeous with all of his models. Like the fact that even the Relictor's painted in a different scheme than the rest, and he's got like a strap on his shoulder painted on. Like I'm pretty sure that's not green stuff there. It just looks like he's green stuff to strap on, but that's done entirely through paint. Each one of these guys has a freehand painted cloak with different color schemes, different colored pelts on all of them.
Yeah, I've seen this person posting in our thing, and he's like, he just loves these like medieval cloaks. Each soldier having their own medieval. He paints them like knights. How like knights have their own like sort of barding and like patterns and something. I think he's in the process of painting Fleur de Lis on like Vanquishers or something. I can't remember exactly.
Stomatan Storm Coven. He's currently painting their robes like that. Yeah.
So like these look like medieval knights. Each come from their own house. They have their own sort of heraldry or whatever.
Mm-hmm. There's a couple other things I want to point out. The inside of the cloaks is done really, really well. You can see there's a gradient from dark to light going from the back of the cloak all the way to the end. The gold trim on the back of the cloaks is very well done. I love that people paint that in gold in particular. I love the way that looks. There's one other thing I wanted to point out.
The handles.
Yeah, all the handles are painted in the same colors as the cloaks.
So good. Yeah.
and the few of them that have the tabards or whatever that are cloth. Those are painted to match their cloaks as well. Just an absurd attention to detail. I love it. Just fantastic. Now, I believe he's replicating. Go ahead.
It's interesting, like, when I see this, because often when I talk to some of my friends that are really great painters, they're like, yeah, like, I just don't like Stormcast because, there's no organics on them. Like, there's nowhere to be creative. And then, like, I look at something like this, and it's incredibly inspiring on what you can do in creative ways that I would never even think of.
Mm-hmm. And the simpleness of the armor is kind of understated because it is very well done as well. The highlights are incredibly thin, which make the rest of it looks very crisp. Like if you look at just how thin the highlights are on the black armor in particular, unreal.
Black armor is so hard to do, and he just nails it.
Yeah, he's shaded the armor as well. It's not just like flat colors. Like there's armor panel shading on every single piece of the armor. Light spots are lighter, dark spots are darker, which all just seems obvious. But like actually doing all of this takes a tremendous amount of time and effort, and I am in for it.
Mm-hmm.
I love the storm drakes that he submitted to our last contest. Just keep it coming, man. These are fantastic. The only criticism I could possibly have is that the gold on the weapons is a little flat compared to the rest of the unit. Like everything else is so meticulous and highly detailed, and then it kind of just looks a little flat for the weapons. But not the silver. It's just the gold part. Maybe it's the photo. Maybe it's just the photo, but like the silver is beautifully shaded as well.
Yeah, maybe it's just the wash he's using.
Could be.
Like, because the null oil does such a different job sometimes than some of the lighter washes.
Mm-hmm. It could just be that painting gold sucks. I hate highlighting gold. It's the worst.
It's tough, especially with the limited quality of the gold paints that GW produces.
Yeah.
It's very
my god.
It's very tough.
I really like the Citadel gold paints. I think they're good. It's disappointing nobody's made a better one yet. Although I've heard good things about Too Thin Coats, so maybe I'll try that. Okay, so congratulations to all our winners. I believe, Jack, will you be reaching out to them?
Sure will.
Fantastic.
Shooting them off tomorrow while I'm at work.
Great. Thank you very much, everybody, for entering.
And everybody that submitted. This was a fantastic contest.
I'm really surprised we have so many people excited about questers and painting them, and they're painting them so quickly, because it took me so many months to paint one squad of them, and everybody's just knocking them out in a couple weeks. And
I'm painting mine right now for this weekend.
Nice. Okay, so we've already announced the beginning of our painting contest, but I thought we should put it in a live stream as well. This month, there's a typo there. Whoops. It shouldn't say October 2023 painting contest, Stormcast Warbands. It should say November 2023 painting Andrasta, because this month we are painting the centerpiece model from Dominion. We know her, we love her, we wish she had better rules or lower point cost, but that's all besides the point, because the model is gorgeous, and we haven't done like a good centerpiece in a while. So I think this is a good opportunity for that. And so same thing as always. Please submit your fully painted Andrasta into the Painting Andrasta channel. The contest closes November 30th at 11:59 Eastern. When you enter your model, please be sure that you put a timestamp for the date and your username. That way we know whose model it is. We don't want people just finding random models on the internet and posting them as if they were theirs. We need to, since there's prizes involved, we want to make sure that people who submit models are actually, those are their models, right? So I'm excited for this one. We've already had a ton of entries. So I think this one has a lot of potential to go off the rails. We're going to see some gorgeous stuff for this, I think.
I'm going to paint mine, finally.
So just in time.
Get it painted up, because if we know anything about models that nobody's playing or are too expensive, eventually they get their moment. And that moment's going to come. I think within the next year at some point.
4th edition, brother. 4th edition.
Sure.
That's
what
it'll come.
They realize that Andrasta isn't even seeing play at 270 that much. So,
exactly.
They have precedent. I mean, if they raise their points after this, that'll be really dumb.
No. They're going to figure it out.
I've been saying for how long she should be 230.
Yeah.
Make it happen.
240.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like the hammer cost, right? 240. Yeah, that's it.
About she should cost like a hammer should cost. Yeah, like a hammer
Yeah,
unit.
she should cost like a evocator on Dracoline.
Agreed.
Yeah.
But
Sure.
the model's gorgeous, and we look forward to all your entries. Eric in chat says looking forward to an Ionis competition. Yes, that will happen at some point. We can't let that model sit on the shelf. We're all too excited about it to not do a painting contest for that model. Okay, so let's jump into our main topic of the day. Before we fully go into it, I just wanted to kind of give a preface of what is still missing from 3rd edition. So this obviously can't be a full comprehensive review because there's still going to be a few things that we just can't possibly predict what's going to happen. But I feel like we're far enough along in the edition that all the stuff that's left probably won't change our opinion of it as a whole, right? Like I can't imagine the next Dawnbringers book, possibly the last Dawnbringers book, and the Flesh Eater Court's Battle Tome and one Battle Scroll just completely change our opinion on the game. Like I don't see that happening. I mean, maybe Flesh Eaters is so busted that it's the only competitive army, but I don't know, probably not, right?
Is it only one battle scroll though before 4th edition launches?
So
No,
don't
there's
know.
two.
there
There's
should
two,
be
but
2.
Assume
Right.
the
Should be two.
spring one isn't gonna be very impactful because there's a new edition
Yeah.
3 months down
Right.
the line.
Yeah, by the time
Right,
the spring
right,
one
right.
comes out, they'll have already revealed 4th edition, right? It's like around the same time. We'll probably get it around April next year, and that's when they'll be building hype for the next edition. So it doesn't really make sense for them to even bother putting out a battle scroll. So that's why I have a question mark
Mhm.
here next to it. If it doesn't happen,
Actually,
I-
I'll take that back. They'll have a spring battle scroll that'll be sort of impactful. They won't have a summer battle scroll
Right.
no,
because
that's
we get one around with June or July. That's why.
Yeah.
That won't be very impactful.
That I don't think we'll get a June one at all because 4th edition should be coming out
Yeah.
in July.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, and the thing is, like, it's not that the edition comes out in July. The box goes for pre-order in July. The edition comes out like the end of that month. So for June, just like 40K did this year, they'll phone it in. They'll do like some changes that don't really matter.
I would be surprised if we see anything other than points adjustments in the spring.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
Now-
they're gonna be like, no, we're dealing with a new rule set now. So.
there has been a precedent set that for a winter battle scroll before the launch of a new edition, they might just make 0 changes again. They've done that before. They can do it again.
I don't.
Okay, but
with-
like that was the most controversial thing ever, and it also happened at a time where I guess like they claimed that games weren't happening because I guess that was 2020, I think, right?
Yeah,
No,
it was. Yeah,
20
was it? Yeah, 2020. So
2020.
yeah, I mean, they sort of had precedent, but you know that's not the case now. And like,
Yeah.
specifically when you note that during the Meta Watch video, they've said that they are watching certain factions. because of what they're
That's my biggest thing, right? Like the current lead designer for AOS is really involved. I don't anticipate we will see battle scrolls run around or come around that do nothing. They'll make adjustments.
Yeah, even if it's like a slight adjustment of the meter to, you know, see how it pans out. But
Right.
roughly, like, I think we'll at least get 2 more good battle scrolls before the last one is just sort of like, who cares?
Now, I just want to say I'm not expecting more than 1. I think we are definitely getting 1, but there is a chance they might just skip the spring one because if the game is relatively balanced, there's no reason to make any changes. Not to rules, not to balancing. Like, I can't, like, maybe just fix stuff in the Cities book and Flesh Eater book. I think that's
Right.
the extent of what they do.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, like we'll
What-
see like January battle scroll, and then Flesh Eater Courts will come out, and then we'll probably see the spring one adjust nothing but points and whatever needs to be adjusted in Flesh Eater
Yeah.
Courts. Like
And-
mechanically,
yes.
I don't think they'll do
Yes.
anything.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, do you guys think there's going to be a Dawnbringers 5?
No, I think
No.
there's gonna be Dawnbringers 4, and then we're gonna be in like because assuming we just had 3, right?
Yeah.
So we're gonna see Dawnbringers 4, I think, around the Flesh Eater Courts release, like that. Like you know how like Broken Realm sort of ended in Catacross's release, Alciar Bone Reapers or whatever.
Mhm.
Or no, sorry, Kragnos' release. My bad. We'll see that. So we'll see like Flesh Eater Courts in January, and then literally 2 months later they have 4th edition to reveal. So why do anything after that point?
And what happens with the GHB?
There will be a
you're
new
not-
one in the summer.
Really?
Yep.
Before the edition starts?
Same time.
Or at the
Same day
same
it
time?
launches.
They
No,
come out
same
the same
time.
time.
It comes out with the new rule set, just like 40Ks
Okay.
did.
Great.
Yeah. So, Yeah, there's probably nothing left, like except a couple Underworlds warbands or whatever, Warcry warbands maybe, because I think there's the rumor is Sylvaneth and OBR warbands in
No,
Warcry.
Sylvaneth and OBR?
Yeah, that's the rumor. I think.
No, I don't know. Do Sylvaneth count as elves?
Yes. There.
Yeah.
Yes, but.
I mean, we know who I know who you're talking about, but they specifically mentioned elf warband. So I'm thinking it's Lumineth and OBR because they have like a rivalry too.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Um,
And I don't. Is there a Lumineth Warcry?
No.
No,
But
so the factions lacking Warcry right now are Sylvaneth, OBR, Lumineth, Nighthaunt, and IDK.
I
Because
think
that's what Lumineth needs is another foot hero wizard.
Lumineth.
No, I mean it'll be a war band, so they're not gonna get like a single a single hero. But yes, it will most likely be Vanari because, or I don't know, maybe it could be an insight into Tyrion's temple. But from what was
that'd
their
be awesome.
yeah, what was their Warcry I guess what is
The
it called roadmap look like?
Order and Death next. So, like I'm thinking Sylvaneth because they were mentioned in the lore, and you know who I'm talking about. Strongly hinting that it should be Sylvaneth, and OBR seems like a lock, based on rumor engines.
Yeah.
Lumineth are due for a release, but it's not going to be for a while. Like they're going to be mid 4th edition somewhere. So, we'll see how that
IDK
pans
and
out.
Sylvaneth, yeah. I could see IDK versus Nighthaunt.
Could happen.
IDK versus Nighthaunt, Lumineth versus OBR, or
Could
Sylvaneth
happen.
versus OBR.
It's not impossible for them to get another IDNet thing because they got Underworlds recently, but it's like Stormcast got Domatan, Stormcoven, and Questers in the same year, so anything can happen.
Yeah, I could see IDK. Yeah, IDK versus OBR, IDK versus.
So
Nighthaunt,
basically, there's going to be a content drought from Flesh Eater Courts, which we expect to be the last thing they release, probably at the same time as Dawnbringers 4, because it seems like the campaign is going to end with the Flesh Eater Courts rising up, and then nothing. Then like literally nothing from January until July.
We'll see another warband because they have. I saw the roadmap. There's like 2 more warbands after that are like to be announced.
As a general rule, though,
they're mostly bad.
Warbands, warbands do not have a significant impact to the play of Age of Sigmar.
Mm-hmm.
Whoa, that depends on the warband. Like I think like Royal Beast Slayers had a very significant impact.
Huge.
I think the Cruel Boys warband is having a very significant impact.
I said
now they can't just be...
in general.
I think
there are exceptions.
There are starting to be more exceptions, but I agree with Jack. It should be assumed that they're all terrible and trash and not worth using.
If they have the Stormcast keyword, we know that's true.
Well, Questers, man. I don't know. You're painting some.
They're just not... No, I think like I'll probably get on this later. I don't think Questers are too... Like, the fact that they're not battle line is hurting them.
Yeah.
There's battle plans where if you're not playing a 7-inch drop list, Questers are a bad pick. Straight up bad pick. If there's no objectives wholly outside your territory and you're not playing a drop list, they're a bad pick. But if either of those is true, they're a great unit.
Yeah.
They should have just made it partially outside. I think that would have really helped with that issue.
Yeah. All right, moving on.
Yeah, we're gonna be in a drought because that's basically what happened to 40k too.
Which is fine.
When 10th got announced, they were in a drought for like 4 months.
If the game was in a worse state, it would not be fine. But it feels fine. So I'm okay with it. I can just play games casually, or just take a break. You know, it's not the end of the world if you take a break. It's fine. Okay.
I'll probably sell some of my old cast to make room for the new Vandus or whatever. That's about it.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that in our hopes for 4th edition video. That'll be fun to talk about. So let's break down some of the big changes in 3rd edition. So the first one here, the biggest one, I think, is command abilities. So I've just got a series of slides here with like big stuff from the edition. I figured that we could use these as a jumping off point to kind of just have a free-flowing conversation. Figured we talk about core rules first, then we'll get into the army identity, and then we'll go into like seasonal rules and things like that. So the first big change in the game is command abilities, right? We did have command abilities last edition. They were not reactive, they were proactive. For example, if you wanted to use Inspiring Presence, you had to use it in your hero phase, and it lasted until your next hero phase. And so you had to pick the unit. So like, it was the best defensive buff ever, but as soon as you put it on a unit, everybody ignored that unit because
Right.
I can't break it. So I'll just hit the unit that doesn't have Inspiring Presence over there. And also the context was different. There's so many more Battle Shock immune things. Like Skaven had Battle Shock immunity. Like Battle Shock basically didn't matter in second edition. Still mostly doesn't matter now, but it's more. But yeah, command abilities are reactive. They have a resource that you need to keep track of for yourself and your opponent in order to maximize your play. They can be incredibly impactful, like a big Unleash Hell, or something as simple as, running 6 instead of rolling a dice. What do you guys think about command abilities in third edition overall? Good, bad,
Overall?
somewhere in the middle. What do you think?
Oh, overall, I love them.
Okay.
I think they're great.
I love them too. I think they're amazing. I think it provides a nice bit of like counter reactive play to when, instead of just watching your opponent bulldoze your models for 2 turns, you can actually do something about it and makes command points relevant. I like how they've branched out into different kinds of commands for specific things. The only thing I would say that I've like how they have put in things that interact with you being able to issue them or not issue them. I'd say the only weird thing, and maybe this might not be a popular opinion among a lot of people, I don't like how some units can issue commands to themselves. I like a unit like Varangard or like Dracothian Guard or like a Stormdrake Guard. I could understand. They are like the elite of the elite. Like they should be able to issue to themselves. But the fact that, like, say, a Chaos Warrior unit can issue commands to its own unit, it sort of lessens the importance of battlefield commanders like a Chaos Lord. Like, if it means that if I don't have any purpose of taking a battlefield commander, a model that GW frequently produces when they, design models for a faction, unless they have like some stupid powerful buff in an aura or a spell or a prayer. Like, why would I take a Chaos Lord on foot ever? Like, no, just take Chaos Sorcerer Lords all the time.
Well, there is a reason to take him. It's not a good one, but there is a reason. he's tough.
Yeah,
Can't be sniped.
Yeah, he's all right, but it's like he has a cute thing where he fights alongside his troops. I think all commanders should just have that, but I think it lessens the importance of heroes sort of following your troops if every troop can just issue commands to itself.
I think the issue with that has less to do with the command abilities and more to do with hero design by GW. Because your point absolutely makes sense. That being said, what is the point of a unit champion if he cannot provide support to his unit?
I think there's a middle ground here where right now it feels just like just terrible if your unit can't issue commands to itself. Like if you have Croxagores or Stormstrike Chariot, it just feels bad that these units can't issue commands to themselves when you're playing these units. But from a top-down view, like if you were watching yourself and another player play the game, I think it's actually cool that those units can't issue commands to themselves. And if more of the game was like that, if it wasn't the normal that almost every unit could issue commands to itself, the game overall, I think, would be more fun. Like, there'd be more room for counterplay. It would make heroes more important. It would make elite units more important. Now, I don't know where the balancing point is, because I don't want to get back to a point where it was just heroes issuing commands. And in second edition, John, you're going to find this wild. Only your general could issue command abilities.
Right.
Wow. Could you have more than one?
You could.
Well, in War Master you could, because they introduced War Master later on. But no, otherwise
that was crazy. Everything was just an ability or a spell or like a roll off to happen.
Right.
A lot of things were turned into command abilities. Yeah, I think maybe I think we've been talking about this internally as a concept, but maybe one potential design could be. Hold on, I'm going to backtrack a second here because I want to set this up properly. One of the flaws with command abilities is look how much crap is on the screen right now. You're trying to learn the game, even without battle tactics and everything. If you're just trying to learn the core rules, there's like a dozen of these things that you have to keep understand. I didn't actually count them. I probably should have. Like 8.
There's 2 for each phase.
Yes,
except for Battle Shock, right? There's just one command in the Battle Shock.
So there's 8 commands you have to basically know that every army can do, in addition to whatever else you have going on. I don't think it needs to be this many. And one of the problems I think AOS is suffering from currently is that it's just too complex of a game. And not that depth is good. It's really good to have a lot of depth in a game. But the initial complexity needs to be as low as possible, because that way players don't have to climb a wall in order to just play the game and start to understand and appreciate the depth. Like, John, I appreciate how quickly you've picked up on the game, but I suppose you're the kind of person who's okay with that level of complexity. I think a lot of people are turned off, not necessarily just by command abilities, but it's like everything, right? Command abilities, heroic actions, rampages.
I played without
spells.
it for a while at the beginning.
Yeah.
I literally played without them.
Well, and that's that onboarding new players for Age of Sigmar needs to be a sort of tiered stage introduction of complexity as you are learning the game.
I agree. And there is a lot of that.
Jumping into a 2,000 point match play game with the General's Handbook and battle tactics is not the way to onboard a new player.
Yeah.
No, I mean, and Rob saying like 2 phases not that complex, and it's not. Like, I agree. Like, these commands are fine. That's why, like, I really like that newest White Dwarf, because in it there's like a starter player pack, and they say don't bother with the battalions. Don't worry about them.
There will be another thing that later I will advocate, and I say we should just get rid of this entirely. Commands overall are not that bad. But what I'm saying is the combination of all these things makes AOS a less approachable game than it could be. And it's kind of being designed in a way that it will just die over time, because we'll just bleed out.
I don't think it will. So no, here's the thing, right? 40k has way more complex than this,
right?
In terms of like commands, in terms of like secondaries, in terms of like all the data sheets, how they're all different. It's not just hit and wound, and it's like strength and like blah 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 blah. Like I think AOS is fine, like in terms of like onboarding new players. It's just that they're just like they need a starter pack where like we have one in the White Dwarf now, where it's like, don't worry about battle tactics, don't worry about battalions, just play the game with your base commands and movement or whatever.
Yep. That's what open play should be, I think.
I will say that
I want that to happen.
I will say that like command abilities in general, like many of the other aspects of the game, even once you like learn, or you can remember them without having to look at your sheet anymore. Like once you've been playing for a few months and you're getting comfortable. The one thing that was very interesting to me is just like the depth of a lot of the things that people don't necessarily talk about, but you start to pick up on. Like, for example, like, Unleash Hell and Redeploy, for the longest time, it's just like 2 things that I can do, right? But you start to realize as you play more competitively the impact that those 2 things have with each other. And if you do one, you can't do the other. And the way that really affects decision making on how you position, specifically around, all out attack and all out defense, right? Like not being able to issue the 2 of them to a single unit, the amount of time that took to kind of like really understand and really think about going into those phases, I think was a depth to the mechanic that is a bit more of like, gives it a bit more of like a kind of gambling kind of thing that's based on like some core knowledge about the experience you've had previously, whereas like when you first start, you're sort of just like, oh well, I can do this now, and like it's going to help me, and you're not really thinking about needing to save for the next phase, right? Or needing to make sure you don't ruin that redeploy, roll a 1 and now you can't unleash hell, like all those little things.
Yeah. The better you get at the game, the better redeploy gets, right? Like, and the better your opponent gets too, the worse redeploy gets, which is interesting. Yes. I want to make my position very clear about this, because I'm kind of leading into another point, and I think the 2 things will make sense together. I love the complexity of Age of Sigmar. I adore it. This game, I have been playing it since 2016, and I feel like I still haven't mastered it. It is an endless level of depth, not just because every matchup is unique and there's always interactions. It just always feels like there's more to learn, and I love it. I love the complexity. I love the depth. But I don't want to see the game die because people are getting in, seeing all of this stuff that's in the way of actually just moving their models that will impact how you move your models, right? Like picking a battle tactic, picking a heroic action, all this stuff before you move a single model, right? And I think we can strip complexity away. I'm not saying command abilities are the place to do it, but I think it's one potential avenue. So where I'm going with this is, a way to reduce the upfront complexity without reducing the overall complexity could be achieved. Like, for example, what if there weren't 8 universal command abilities? What if there was just, run 6, reroll charge, all out attack, all out defense? And then if you wanted the other 4, you had to bring a specific hero in your list. So, like, just, again, I don't know how balanced this would be. Balance is not the concern. It's about the feeling of the game and the impact of just the fun of the game. What if, for example, Stormcast could only get forward to victory to run 6 if you had a Knight Heraldor? Or what if you could only unleash hell if you had a Lord Ordinator? You know what I mean? Like, gets rid of all this potential, and it says if you want this in your list, you bring this particular hero. Again, not from a balance concern, but from because you can make it any number of heroes. You could have like 6 different heroes in the book bring a certain command ability. But what that would do basically is take these abilities out of the core rules as something you have to learn in order to play the game, and make it something you opt in with your list. Like, I brought this hero because I want this ability, so I know what this ability does. I don't have to learn this ability unless I bring this hero. So that's I think that's an avenue to explore. And I hope that makes my point more clear about what I'm trying to say, is that we can pull back the upfront complexity without reducing the depth of the game.
Sure.
It is an avenue. I don't like it.
That's not even the best way to do it. It's just one, the goal is to make it less intimidating for new people without losing any of the depth. That's what I would love in like a perfect world where you can have a perfect design, but you can't. But that's what I would love to see happen.
I actually really like one of the things that you said earlier about layers of complexity. Think about it like rule modules, and then something like open play is where you begin to bolt on rule modules a little at a time, depending on what your mastery and feel of the game is. I would much rather see that.
That's basically what I'm advocating for.
The game. Yeah,
because it doesn't have to be heroes. What if it's like a battalion? If you want a certain command ability, you just fill this battalion and boom, your whole army has this ability now. Like, the balancing side of it is not really what I'm discussing here, and I think people will get tied down on that. Just the idea that it's opt-in complexity, modular rules, right? And that's what, for guys who are playing Age of Sigmar first edition, the GHB was modular rules. You know, the rule of 3 didn't exist in open play, but as soon as you went to match play, it's like, oh well, now there's limits. You got to deal with these extra rules on top of things, and it felt good to opt into those rules.
I think the heart of this desire sort of comes from, like, right now the easy mode of playing is they're just like, oh, start at 500 points and play 500 points, play 1,000 points, and it, like, I'm sure you guys have played those games in the past. I played those games at the beginning, and they just didn't quite work. Like, they were like kind of weird, right? Like, things were really tilted.
Yes.
And all the layers of complexity were still there, and it was like, okay, but wait.
I started teaching my 13-year-old Age of Sigmar several months ago. And one of the things that we did was, our first game was 750 points, and it was 3 objectives in the middle of the table, no battle tactics, no battle tactics, no grand strategy, and just the core rules with command abilities, just the stuff out of the 22 pages of the core rules and your war scrolls, and that was it. And I think that staging in the complexity with, because like at the time, no shooting units. It was basically all melee units. It was all movement and combat. And then the next game, we added some shooting units in and that kind of stuff, so that each time we played, the games got a little bit bigger and the rules that we were using got more expansive.
I think that's the way to do it. And I think the core rules need to support that. So imagine a system where it's like you open up the core rules, and what if the core rules themselves, just the core rules, were like 4 pages, just teaching you how to move, shoot, fight, whatever. No commands, no heroic actions, no tactics. Here's a basic battle plan. Like, the first edition rules were 4 pages, and they worked really well for getting into the game. Right, but then you take those 4 pages and then you add the rest of the rules and say, okay, now that you've mastered those 4 pages, here's the rest of the rules.
Right.
You know, like, yeah, I don't know if maybe I should have fixated on command abilities as the place to do that. But I'm just saying it's one of the avenues of like, oh, there's a lot of options. I don't know what the right option is. Like, you have to play a lot before you really appreciate how good all of these command abilities are. And then how stupidly broken the command core are. God, I hate cities. It's not going to be fun. Okay.
Whatever.
Didn't want to deviate that much, but what else do we think about command abilities? How do we feel about command points? Do we feel like the amount we get and the amount we spend is the right balance? And how do we feel about like army-specific command abilities? Because that's another part of this conversation.
Fine.
Yeah, like the holy commands being like command abilities, command points, was kind of annoying, or something that was strange for me when I found out.
I found it weird that we had to select
don't
one
have
from a
that.
list. It could have just been like OBR. We just have access to all of them, and
why
they're
don't
all
we
once
just
a
have
game.
them all? Exactly. Yeah.
It's one. I don't think it would be the most broken thing ever. Like
I don't
because
think
they
so
all
either.
require separate different units. I think,
Or
except
different
for
builds,
I guess
kind of, that you're leaning.
yeah. It's like you're not going to use Steadfast March on like I mean, I guess where Steadfast March and Final Thunderstrike are a little different, but it's like it's fine. Like even if I wanted to use multiple holy commands in a turn, I don't have the command point economy to do that.
Right.
So it's like.
Totally.
I think they're balanced around that. So it's like I don't know why they just don't unlock it for like the whole thing.
Yeah, just picture how overpowered Stormcast could be if you could Final Thunderstrike in every game.
Okay.
Oh no,
Yeah.
you killed my 10 wound liberator. Guess I'll mortal wound you on 5, something that Korn
On
already does.
5,
Also,
which they should be doing anyway.
Yeah.
like
Wow, my
Steadfast March.
Dracotch instead of 10 moved 14 just one turn. Wow, what a broken game.
Yeah.
Now that
And,
Battle
like,
Mage is dead, there's no reason to take Steadfast March, unfortunately.
But are we the only ones with a run and charge ability that can't be used with the regular command auto 6?
Yeah. I think we are, because
It's
Daughters of
so
Cain does
weird.
it in Daughters of Cain. I think does it in the charge phase. So once you've already run,
Yes.
they issue it to let you charge.
Almost all of the run and charge effects are either flat passive abilities, or they are used in the charge phase, so you can auto run 6 and then get into combat. We're the only
I think
ones.
the other
that
one
don't
I
get
can
to
think
do
of
that.
is OBR. I think
Deep
OBR has to declare theirs in the hero phase, but that's like
Deepkin
cool.
has
For
their
what?
tied one.
For run and
For
charge.
the
You're talking about
Stalkers.
for the stalkers.
Yeah,
but
Stalkers-
that's a war scroll ability, right? So
Yeah, but it is a command. I'm saying
it is a
it's like
command. Sure.
Yeah. You issue it in the hero phase, and then you can 6-inch move them in the 6-inch run them in the
Right.
movement phase.
Yeah, and we're the only ones who only get to do it once per game.
Yep.
It's just odd sometimes. Like, did they just forget to like fix that? Like, I don't understand.
No. It's no, John. It's like a 2.5 book. Like literally,
Okay.
it is a 2.5. You look at the enhancement section, and it's like literally, it's like there's an artifact in there that stops rerolls. Nobody has rerolls this edition. What are they doing?
It's very clear. Our book was written while the 3rd edition rules were in development and had not been finalized.
Yep.
Steadfast March used to just be an ability the Heraldor gave a unit every turn.
Right.
And you could run 6 with it. So I loved using Evocators, having a 10-inch move, like foot Evocators, 10-inch move, and then charge every time.
So
that's a great ability to give a hero. Awesome. Let's do
Wouldn't that be nice if you could have a command like that on a hero? Like I was saying.
I don't think it should be a command. I think what we should have seen more of is specific heroes interacting with commands in unique ways.
Yeah, like
that's what should be.
Those heroes that give 4-up rallies are really cool. Yeah. Like Battlesmith is great.
I would have liked if the Heraldor could give out rallies, if Gabriel Shorehart maybe had like run and charge baked into his thing, where it's like if you issue the holy command with Gabriel Shorehart, the Steadfast March, because he really likes things to charge, he's Gabriel Shorehart, he can issue this holy command to 2 units instead of 1.
Yeah. To the point that you were, or to the question that you were posing, Paul, I think unique command abilities that are specific to a particular hero or a particular army, they're fine when they are basically taking the place of what would normally be a war scroll ability that you want to limit by tying it into that resource. It's fine. In general, they've been okay. we approach this from the viewpoint of being Stormcast players, and the way that that was implemented for our army was very bad. And it leaves us with, I think, a bit of a skewed viewpoint on how these interactions work. But overall, I think it's fine. My only objection to the way command abilities work is I don't like the random dice roll with redeploy.
It's insane.
It
I,
feels really bad when you use your last command point on a redeploy and roll a 1. And it feels kind of weird to have a game-winning moment where you redeploy 6 inches. It should just be 3 inches and be done.
So I used to agree with that wholeheartedly, but I've completely come around on redeploy. I think redeploy is such a powerful thing. You have to assume it's going to be a big redeploy. It's going to ruin all your plans. And I think once you accept that and you start playing around redeploy, I actually think it's good that it's random. Because it's a skill testing thing to be able to assume it's a 6, assume what your opponent could do, keeping out of 9-inch movements. I think redeploy is okay, because I can't think of a better design for redeploy that doesn't make it too consistent or too weak. I really
if you make it consistent, it'll be one of the strongest things you can do. If you make redeploy a D3 plus 3, it will be the strongest things you can do.
Well, yeah, I'm not saying 3 inches.
Also, this is like that classic case that we were talking about at the beginning of this video. As people who try to play this game competitively, we like things that have consistent inputs and outputs.
Yeah.
But that is not something the game designer should do, because that level of RNG, us having to account for it, is what makes the game fun to watch, fun to play, and fun to experience.
Yeah, Jack, let me put it this way. Was it fun before Primal Dice, right? So we're talking before Primal Dice. Was it fun to have armies consistently cast over and over and over and over at you, and you had basically no recourse against it?
Fun? No. But there's also something to be said about, because now we're talking an entirely, we're skewing off on a tangent, because that goes into army design.
Yeah.
There are some armies that should cast a lot and should be good at it. Right?
But it's also not fun.
Illumineth. Is it fun for opponents to take a 4-pack of Fulminator charge in the face? No.
I would say yes, because that involves a whole lot of positioning and counterplay available, right? If you're getting charged by Fulminators, there's been a series of decisions that led to that point. And there's been a series of counter decisions that could have mitigated or prevented that. It's just like taking a charge from anything, right? There's more counterplay, whereas something like spells, there's basically no counterplay. Right, most armies are just dog water at unbinding, and that's kind of consistent redeploys. I think just wouldn't be fun. It would be too predictable.
But consider this: why is the retreat consistent?
Well, it's just your movement.
But a redeploy is essentially
it is not. Redeploy is so much more than a retreat. Oh boy.
No. Redeploy is move blocking you. It's making you fail your charge. Sometimes it makes you fail a battle tactic. It makes you fail an objective. Retreats can achieve that, but retreat involves having to risk your models in the first place. Redeploy is a lot more powerful, especially when you can issue it multiple times for free.
Yeah. Or you get to re-roll how far you redeploy and pick the result.
Roll 2 dice and choose the highest one or whatever.
I like what skinks do. Skinks roll 2 and they pick 1. So I'd be okay with having some armies be better at redeploying, just like some armies are better at rallying, some armies are better at that's the end of the list. All the other commands are pretty standard, right? I think this would kind of bleed into a later discussion about army design, where it feels really cool when an army does a twist on a core mechanic. When you have a 4-up rally, even though I hate rally, and I guess we could talk about that, the fact that some armies have a 4-up rally feels cool. The fact that some armies can issue certain commands multiple times feels cool. And I think command abilities overall have been a big winner because the way they've kind of integrated it. And I wish they did more. Holy commands are cool. They're not typically strong enough, usually except for Thunderbolt Volley, but they have the potential to be a lot better. Okay. Would you guys get rid of Rally? if you had the opportunity, just it's gone from the game. Find some other way to revive models and Daughters of Cain and Fire Slayers. But like, what do you think about Rally? I guess I should have asked that instead.
I would, okay, this is weird. I am actually gonna cheat a little. I'm gonna borrow this from Warhammer Weekly.
Okay.
Rally feels like a very order mechanic.
Mm.
It is like you are a general of order and you are, rousing and rallying your troops. Like, hey,
Yeah.
guys, get back up. Let's go. Let's get back at them.
Yep.
I feel like rally should be like an order thing only. I think, or like, I guess in some ways a better rally is, but I don't know, like a 4-up rally, if you have that, for instance, I think should only be in the domain of order. I don't think Death should be able to issue it because Death already has
A
like
recursion
necromantic
mechanic.
energies or whatever
Yeah.
going on in that faction. They shouldn't even have access to it.
So when I was learning, I thought, because of the way it was worded, that rally only worked for troops that ran due to battle shock.
Yeah.
And so I thought there was like a tie-in there, and the more that ran, maybe the easier it was to rally. And obviously that's not the case, but I've always thought that would be an interesting, way of doing it.
I actually really like that. I think that if the Battle Shock, if they change it going into 4th edition, if Battle Shock moved to the end of the hero phase the way that it is in 10th edition right now, I think that your idea would work great.
So Robert, I think, no, go finish your thought, Jack. I was going to answer.
Well,
Robert's
no,
thing.
all I was going to say is rally is fine. I think that its core mechanic is fine. I personally don't believe that anything should ever rally on a 4. That is way too good. And I think that rallying on a 5 should have significant restrictions to it.
I think the wound restriction that they put on rally is fine. 10 wounds is like very manageable. What I will say though, Robert says like recursion should almost only be a death mechanic. I don't think so, because the idea behind rallies, I don't think it's to like issue recursion. It's because for the longest time people have no recourse to magic and shooting armies, and now they do. Because if they get like 2 turns of shooting you or damaging you from range, and you're a melee army, and they whittle down your Hearthguard Berserkers or whatever to like 8 models, you've lost that game.
Yeah.
What it's giving the magic and shooting armies an incentive to is to get into melee with you, so you can't rally.
Right.
So I think with that in mind, I think rally is totally fine. I just don't think it should be like it has like a really high rate of return on some things than others. Like I don't think Death should be able to rally. Like they have recursion, it's fine. I don't think they should have access to it. I think Order should have access to it. Chaos can have its own thing because Chaos has summoning, so I don't necessarily think Chaos should have access to rally either. Maybe you can make an exception for Slaves of Darkness because they play mostly mortals. They don't play any demons.
And I don't think slaves have a summoning mechanic, right?
No, they
Ravagers.
They don't.
Ravagers can summon, right? They just revive a unit every turn, even on your turn.
Yeah, I mean they basically
it.
have better recursion than Soul by Gravelords if you really want to go after
which is a different conversation.
I hate recursion being in every army, right? I hate the idea that I can rally back 2 Draculanes and that swings a game so heavily. Like that's crazy how big of a swing that is in a game.
Yeah, I've rallied 4 Raptors back. It's been the game's over.
Getting a dragon back is always like the best feeling in the world.
Yeah.
On the other hand, it's random. You're not guaranteed, so you could just be wasting a command point, which is a precious resource, especially in Stormcast, because our holy commands work off of them. So the opportunity cost and the risk is appropriate given the power. And I like where Rally is positioned in the sense that armies that would normally need some kind of defense against shooting and magic, like Fire Slayers, maybe Daughters of Cain don't need it, but they're fragile, so maybe like the armies that have good rallies should have good rallies, because otherwise they'd be so weak against shooting and magic, like they'd be unplayably bad, right? So it's like if they didn't have the bonuses to rally, they'd have to have some other mechanic, which would probably be something stupid like bonuses to save rolls against shooting. Like Cities of Sigmar has Ethereal against shooting, and then also has 3d3 revives and has rally. And Return Fire, which is like the best anti-shooting ability in the game. So yeah, I'd be concerned what the game would look like from a balance standpoint, and I like that rally exists basically as a anti not melee mechanic. Like, no, you come melee me if you want me to stop reviving, right? So I think that's cool, but I can't balance that in my head with the idea that like these huge spikes happen. So I don't know, because I also like the randomness of it, right? Like I like that things aren't predictable. So I don't know how to balance that. Yeah.
Sometimes I think the thing, like when we talk about balance, like and like the feel bads and stuff, like of it being random, I think it's okay that it's random. I wonder if there'll ever be a world where you pay for what you get, you know, like, and I'm not suggesting things start costing a bunch of command points, but it is interesting sometimes, you know, like losing that CP and
Yeah.
really not getting anything
Not
over
getting
and
anything
over
for it.
again.
Look,
versus like, oh,
Yeah.
if you got a lot, you know, maybe that costed you more, or you had, I don't know.
for every time I've rallied a Dracoline, I failed it 5 other times. So
Exactly.
Yeah, like
Exactly.
I honestly I think with the wound restriction, like the wound cap, I think rally's fine. Like
Yeah.
it was a real problem when like they were down to like 2 thunders and they were back up to 12. I think that was a problem.
Yeah.
I still think like rally should be balanced in other ways where it's like based around here. Like I think like Bloodsuck Creator having like a better rally is fine. I think the Battlesmith having a better rally is fine. I don't like the fact that KO has just like this army wide thing where they just get rally out of 4-up. Like, and there's nothing you can do about it. That I don't like.
Yeah, I like having specific abilities tied to specific heroes so that there's counterplay. There's
Yeah,
pressure
because that
from both
determines
sides.
the range. Yep,
Yeah.
it determines the range. It determines their placement. It determines what they do to try to protect that hero.
Yeah.
You know,
Army-wide
the
stuff
fact that
is
KO
weird.
can just yeet their entire army in your face, knowing that they have a 4-up rally, just anywhere on the board, is just really stupid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's no hero you can snipe out to get rid of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess last thing I just really wanted to quickly talk about command abilities because we're spending a lot of time here. Unleash Hell, it got nerfed, right? Obviously, it's not 9 inches anymore. Is there ever a world where you guys would want it unnerfed? In some way?
No.
Maybe
I
not.
think 6 is no, it's perfect. 6 is
okay.
I don't even remember it being 9.
Yeah.
It used to be also units within 9, not models.
Yeah. No. Jesus,
would you ever consider models within 9, or is that too much?
No, models of the 9 is still
No.
too many. Like,
Okay.
there's so many. Think of
6
like
is
Raptors or
perfect.
like the Cruel Boys. Think of things that can issue multiple unleash. Would you really want models within 9 to do it?
No.
God, no.
Okay.
Especially because with 6, it gives you this option where you can maybe only put in a couple, and you're really limiting how many they're going to get in. You know,
really-
and then you're going to pile in to get your
It's
attacks in.
fine.
It's nice. It's
I
nice
love
that it's
playing. I love playing around Unleash Hell. It feels really good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Agreed.
totally.
And being someone who uses Unleash Hell a lot, I think it's fine.
Yeah.
Forcing my opponent to corner charge my Tempesters to limit the number of Tempesters that can shoot, but then sacrificing the number of models that will be able to then pile in and fight feels like a fine decision.
I feel
fine.
I feel the same way about redeploy. It actually feels really good to play around redeploy. It's a fun mechanic to play around.
Like when you're doing the mirror thing, when you're seeing where they could possibly go, and you're
thinking of all the possibilities.
Yeah.
It's like mentally exhausting,
fun.
but it's super fun.
So let's flip this around a little bit.
Okay.
What if Inspiring Presence, instead of auto-passing Battle Shock, you roll a d6 and reduce the number of models that flee?
Yeah.
Well, because my issue with redeploy is that setting rally aside for a second, because our rally in Stormcast sucks. We don't have any bonuses. It sucks.
Just roll more 6s,
Vanquishers. Come on. Units of 10 Vanquishers.
Units of 10 Vanquishers that can't fight? Yeah, no thanks. It's the only command that has this dramatic die roll associated with it. All of the other commands work, and they do what they say on the tin.
Yeah.
And redeploy doesn't. And that bothers me.
It's a controlled randomness, though, right? Just like re-rolling a charge. If the charge is a high charge, then it's less likely to succeed. There's varying value out of all-out attack and all-out defense, right? Depends on the situation. It depends on the rend. And I think redeploy has enough going for it because of different scenarios that you find yourself in that, like, Yeah, you know what? One of the worst feelings in the world, I'm not going to disagree, that one of the worst feelings in the world is I'm moving up for a 3-inch charge, and they get a 6 on redeploy, and then I fail a 9-inch rerollable charge. I hate that.
Right.
I don't know what to do about that, frankly, because I really like how random redeploy is, right? But even then, there's counterplay. Like, you could just move another unit behind it and sandwich the two, so it can't just walk away, right? There's always counterplay to redeploy. Every time I think about, oh, that redeploy felt really bad, it's like, well, I could have done this instead. I could have predicted this. I could have thought about that.
I don't know if Eric is still in the chat. One of the things that he posted was D3 plus 1 inches. I like that.
Maybe.
I'm okay with redeploying having some randomness to it, but I would like it to be slightly more consistent. And I'm fine with not redeploying 6 inches.
Yeah, cut the top off of it, like with Rally. Maybe it's just the spikes are too spiky. That could be the issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Let's move on from command abilities. That was a good chat. Heroic actions. What do we think about heroic actions? So command abilities are reactive gameplay, and I think we didn't even talk about that because we love reactive gameplay, right? That just feels good in this game. Heroic actions are another form of reactive gameplay, and I guess I'll start. Heroic actions mostly suck. They're basically just healing, command points. Sometimes you unbind, or like Finest Hour. Finest Hour is just like big monsters for the most part. Like smaller heroes sometimes, but it's like usually the big monster charges in and wants to tank stuff for a turn. That's when it's going to
if you see your opponent shooty, you just place your big monster out, and on their turn you declare Finest Hour. That's how Finest Hour is being used.
I really like heroic actions conceptually. I like the idea that heroes should feel more heroic. I like the idea that these effects should have some impact on the battlefield. I just think all of these are too weak. And
Agreed.
They could
there's not enough of them.
That's my problem. Like, I think like 90% of the time I see people go for the command point, right?
Yeah.
And then if you fight like Tzeentch or Seraphon or like a magic that they have one more unbind than you, and you think you'll have a chance of doing it, especially now with Primal Dice, it makes heroic willpower relevant. But before, when they had a +3 to cast, you would not even bother with like a heroic willpower because you're like, who cares?
Finest Hour is quite good, I think.
I think we just need more heroic actions.
These could all be pushed a little bit stronger.
I think command point could be on a 3-up. It wouldn't be the worst thing.
There's just like sometimes you heal 3. Like,
I agree.
Because they happen at the start of every turn. There's scenarios where you heroic recovery into I've just negated my opponent's turn. I love a good timed Finest Hour. Like, if you have a big tanky monster run into stuff and then it pops Finest Hour, that feels good, right?
Yeah.
Baiting out Finest Hour feels really good.
Feels great. Yeah.
There's a lot of counterplay there. Heroic Leadership feels like the default one. Unless you have another thing you want to do, you're going to leadership. And then it just feels like half the time I have one less command point. It never feels half the time I have one more. It always feels half the time I have one less. Right?
I don't think heroic recovery should be tied to bravery at all.
Agreed. No. It's stupid that some heroes just get punished for not being.
Yeah, it's like why is it that a necromancer can suddenly just heal better than like a mega boss? Like, that's weird.
This kind of ties into our discussion about rally and recursion in general. Is like, should every hero be able to heal D3 at the start of every turn? Should that be more restricted? Should some armies have a better version of heroic recovery?
I feel so first off, I think every army should have 1 or 2 unique heroic actions for that army. I love heroic actions. I wish that there were more of them. When I see armies that have unique heroic actions, I think they are super cool, super flavorful. I love them. I think that if the heroic actions were more impactful in the game, then making heroic recovery a flat D3 is fine.
Yeah.
Because it's a choice, right? You only get one of them. And I'm okay with making it so that if there were more heroic actions to choose from, making it so that each hero can only perform each heroic action once would be fine. So, yeah, if you make the heal D3 automatic, that's great. He only gets to do it once per game.
Yeah.
That would be fine.
I might actually be okay with that, because it's like, is it heroic for a Mock Russia to just, like, I don't know, eat some leaves or whatever and heal D3 and then next turn do it again? Like, it doesn't, it's not really like what a hero should be doing, right?
Right.
And then I guess if you go the once per game route, you could even get rid of the restriction of being within 3 inches of an enemy. Where it's like, boom, once per game, heal D3. That could be okay.
It's fine.
I'm totally on board with faction specific heroic actions. I think they inject a lot of flavor into every faction that has them.
I think we just need more of them to like.
We need more of them, right? We need more.
Stormcast needs more. Like every faction, in my opinion, could use at least one unique heroic action that they should just have.
Yeah.
Mergonk, I think I like that you mentioned just adding more. I would add 2 to the game. First one, heroic action, on a 4+ gain a primal dice. I would love to have that
like
in
a GHB.
Yep. Get rid of acolytes and just make it a heroic action. You know, keep primal dice. They're a great mechanic. Love to have a heroic
Battle
action.
Regiment. Here we come.
Yeah. And then the second one I would add is bring back hero face fighting for foot heroes. That felt awesome. There were so many games where like a sneaky Runefather would get in past my lines and then just top of the turn kill my hero because he just managed to pile in with his 3-inch.
Yeah. I think you could have call
so
it like
cool.
Aggression. Like I actually like that. Like a foot hero that's in combat can just fight in the hero phase.
They should, because hero damage is almost irrelevant in this game. Unless you're like a big punchy monster.
Most of it,
unless you're
unless you're talking about like a mega boss on foot, most of it's going to be 5 attacks, 3s and 3s, -1/2 damage.
Yeah, and that's just not really relevant because of how combat activations work and the risk of just a 5-wound hero dying before he gets to fight. Because you're never going to fight with a hero first, usually, right? Well, not never, but usually not. But yeah, if finishing a turn within 3 inches and then being able to top of the turn heroic action, that feels heroic. You know, like he went in for this big play and he got rewarded. So I'd love to see that. And then I know I was talking about how we should reduce complexity, but if this is in like a separate rule pack, you know, like you got 4-page core rules or whatever, and then here's your expanded rules, here's the full actual game that was waiting just under the surface, then that's fine.
I think GHB is the place for that stuff.
Could be. Just a match play battle pack, and then the GHB modifies it with like, don't use this instead, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Only so, and this goes into kind of GW's business approach. If we start encapsulating this stuff into supplements, then we have to be careful because of how GW monetizes the game.
True.
I do not want to have to buy 6 rule books to go play an RTT.
Yeah.
Do not want.
Agreed. Getting a little off on a tangent here. But heroic actions, I think they're cool. I think they should be cooler. I hope they continue into 4th edition and get better. Yeah. This is a system worth expanding. Except for Legion of Night, that's bullshit. Get rid of that.
You're talking about the teleport?
Legion of Night also isn't bad. The only change they need made is the Starborn change, which is you can do it in your turn.
Yes. Put that in. Doing really huge things like teleporting a hero in your opponent's turn is a bit much. Like, okay, here's a potential change to rally that we're just going back to it. What if it's only in your turn? That way you can't retreat into a rally at the start of the turn. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Or, so commands have almost all of the commands are mirrored, and you have a command that you can do in your turn and a command you can do in your opponent's turn.
Like it would have a bonus effect in the opponent's turn.
I am totally fine with heroic actions that you can do in your turn and heroic actions that you can do in your opponent's turn.
Well, like Finest Hour gives you +1 to wound and +1 to save. And depending on what you want to do, whose turn it is, obviously, because you're doing different things in different turns, that's fine. I think that's fine.
Yeah. Make it so that it's either +1 to wound or +1 to save, depending on what turn it is.
Well, it works well here. It's both, right? I like it.
I know.
I like it.
I know.
Okay. Moving on. Our next one here, obviously following up, completing the trifecta of reaction abilities, reactive gameplay, is Monstrous Rampages. So what do we think about Monstrous Rampages overall, starting with Mergonk?
I think they're great. I think we talked in 2nd edition about how to make monsters feel monstrous.
Yeah.
You had the particular idea of a -1 to wound other than for some specialist paladin units. I think it wasn't a bad idea, but I like this better. It gives monsters a whole range of like almost like a double utility. It's like the hero does something and the mount does something completely else. Like Roar. Roar is possibly one of the best command abilities. Sorry, abilities in the game that
Yeah.
exist currently.
Oh, it's really good.
Yes.
Yeah, Stomp is nice because then you're like, okay, at the very least, if the Roar is kind of irrelevant, I can add a bit of damage to my monsters. I can fight other monsters there. All these are like pretty wonderful. I think they should also keep with the trend of adding things that are monstrous rampages to armies. Like we haven't talked about this yet, but I actually quite like the Draconid Skywing monstrous rampages. I think those
Yes.
are very
Mhm.
fitting
They're very good.
for the Drakes. Like, and they actually
Yep.
took their -1 to wound idea. So like, I guess like that's pretty solid. The only one I don't like is that stupid 3d6 move. That just
You're
like
talking about the unstoppable rampage from the Stonehorns and
Stonehorns
Yeah,
and now
yeah.
Gargants have it. I don't like that
and
one.
Mangler Squigs. Mangler Squigs
Yes.
also have it.
Yeah, I don't like that one.
Right.
I also like that they are introducing units that turn off monstrous rampages entirely. It's like
thanks.
things like
Thanks for Andrasta. Thanks you for that, GW.
yeah, it's
So
like what the
useless.
hell is Andrasta doing? Jesus
Right.
Christ! And it's like, oh, for that
She's
matter,
not
what are the
fighting
Astral
monsters.
Templars doing? Just be like, can't carry on monstrous rampages within 3 inches of Astral Templar units.
Yeah.
Just do that. It's
Yeah.
like, I don't know. It's so I think like they need to like sort of, the things that are supposed to be anti-monster really should sort of like I think Avia Volga is fine. Like she doesn't stop monsters rampages, but like she basically makes the monster have one attack on
Mhm.
every attack profile. So it's like who cares? But it's like I think those things also that monster counter monster exist, but I think these are in a great place. And I think every faction, just like heroic actions, if
Should
they have an
their own.
identity around a monster, they need to have a monster faction that sort of represents that.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah.
Like I
Rampages
like
are
this
dope.
better than I like this better than mount traits because these have an opportunity cost to them.
Right.
It's a wider variety of options, but there's also an opportunity cost.
I think mount traits can exist alongside these. I think conceptually they can be different things. Rampages feel so much better. Like they're so fun to use in
Yeah.
Coalesce. They're so fun to use in Gargants. Even the new Skywing is just awesome. Like every time you have a unique rampage, it feels cool. Except for the 3d6 charging, because that's just too much unpredictable threat range where I don't know. It just feels like neither player is gonna have a good time.
No, I've seen someone literally like it can make screening irrelevant. I've seen someone roll a 17 on that, and it's like they're moving more than their like standard movement.
Yeah.
If a monster is gonna
It's-
move 14, I don't think it should move 3d6.
I honestly I think it should be I don't know D3 plus 3 or D3 plus 6 inches.
No,
something
I think
more
it'd be fine if
manageable.
it was 2d6.
2d6.
Like I just don't think
Yeah,
you should ever be
2d6.
able to move more than your base movement.
Yes.
Like if a Gargant moves 10 inches, doesn't make sense for the Gargant to suddenly be yeeting across the field at 18 inches.
Yeah, it's weird.
Those are the only rampages I don't like. Every other rampage is just awesome. Even like Strike Last, even like Carnosaur biting stuff and eating that instantly. All of these things feel monstrous and cool.
Yeah.
Have you seen the Soulblight ones, the Avengary ones? They're actually really
they're
cool.
awesome.
Avengary ones
awesome.
let you eat models, and there's one that's like if any Avengary unit nearby dies, this unit can fight immediately, so it lets you fight twice. Like those things are cool. Those things are really cool, and there is an opportunity cost because you're not going to be able to like roar if you do that. Well, you can if you take Luca Y because Luca Y enables 2 monsters rampages. So I like things like that.
But you're bringing a specific, unique hero to do that, and that's fine.
Yeah, no, I think monsters. There are lists that very much want to play Monster Mash, or they have monsters as their core identity.
Right.
I think they should keep these, expand on them, and just clean
Expand
up some
on
of the
them.
really
Yes.
weird ones. Like I don't feel like the 3d6 one is like really
Yeah.
like appropriate. Like I'm standing in the way. Like I'm sure you have some momentum. I'm not gonna let you bulldoze through my whole army. That's why my army exists, is to not let you bulldoze through it.
I think Titanic Duel isn't good enough. I think you could
No.
also add 1 to wound rolls.
No, I don't think it
You
should.
don't think so?
No,
Maybe
I
just
think-
for the
I think-
monster, not the rider, though.
Isn't it sort of just a counter to if you get roared?
Yes.
Yeah,
Isn't
like
that-
I think no, yeah, I like it because Titanic Duel is basically the answer to Roar in this case.
Yeah.
It just
If
doesn't
it was
feel
+1 to
great to
wound,
me.
it would be way too strong. Like I don't think it should have. I think it's fine just the way it is.
What I'm saying is instead of +1 hit, +1 to wound.
Like Finest Hour.
Yeah. Maybe that would work.
It's very
No.
powerful.
Titanic
No.
Duel,
I would keep it. I would just keep it.
Okay.
Because it's like if you get charged and they roar your monster, you're like, cool, I'll just Titanic Duel you. Because then there's a choice. It's like, do you think you'll survive? Do you need the +1 to hit? Or would you rather, like, now that you've been roared, what would you rather do? Would you rather roar them and back, or would you Titanic Duel them? That's like a
You
good
take-
choice to make.
Yeah,
It's interesting.
it's fine.
Smash to
I-
Rebel's weird that it can fail, right? Like, how do you miss a building? It's not moving.
Right, and that kind
It's
of
the
comes
best.
into my only issue, other than, like we've said, there needs to be more monstrous rampages. I want either for them to automatically work, or I want them to be a gamble. Like, I think it would be fine if Stomp just did D3 mortal wounds. Why do I need to roll another die for that?
Yeah, and then every
Yeah,
other
I think
rampage
honestly,
on a
like-
3-up.
Yeah, I would be fine if all these core ones went to 3-up. Like
Mhm.
you roll a 3-up first, and then you select, okay, what am I gonna do? Because right now what's happening is you're debating, oh, I have to roll a 3 for this, but I Stomp is only a 2, but I could
Right.
Titanic Duel, but that's like, that's free. I don't have to roll anything for that. It's like, no, just roll a 3-up. If you roll a 3-up, then select what you want to do.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
would be simpler.
And then it adds some power to the faction monsters rampages because they don't require dice; they just go off.
Yeah.
So, last thing I wanted to mention about Rampage's actions and command abilities is that they are reactive gameplay, and I think everybody likes reactive gameplay in Age of Sigmar. It
Yes.
feels amazing, especially if you played first or second edition, where you were pretty much just watching your opponent kill you during their turn, sometimes 2 turns in a row, with very little recourse against it. And there were legit times where I'd be at a tournament, at an event during the day, and my opponent's turn would start, and I would go out and get coffee, and then I'd come back and ask them how many save rolls I had to make. Like,
Right.
you do nothing during their turn, right? But at 3rd edition, fix that. The game is incredibly engaging. Honestly, maybe to a fault. The game is it's exhausting to play through 3 rounds in a day. But it feels good. It feels really good. And I guess what I wanted to ask is, why does it feel so good? And I think the reason is because Age of Sigmar has a double turn mechanic. Reactive gameplay would not feel as good if it was just I go, you go, right? Because we're storing resources, because we're making decisions, because we're gaining access to really powerful things like Roar that can disrupt an opponent's plans or further your own. Things like heroic actions with healing and finest hour, command abilities making a big difference. I think the double turn is what makes these things as satisfying as they are. From like a competitive standpoint, let's say. Maybe not for beginners, but I think for a competitive standpoint, I think it makes it more fun. Because you need some...
I think it makes Age of Sigmar like not a strict trading game. Because 40k is very predictable. It is a trading game. You can see down the line what your opponent is going to put out on the objectives, what you're going to kill on turn 1, what you're going to kill on turn 2, what you're going to expose turn 1 and turn 2. And it comes down to, my trading piece made a lucky save roll and survived, therefore you will die and I will live.
It's a lot more predictable. Games need randomness, right? They need not too much, but enough that the game's not predictable. And the double turn
also,
is
you can't do that in a melee game. You can't do you go, I go in a primarily melee game that has incredibly strong shooting and magic elements. Because don't get me wrong, it's like a curb stomp when a magic or shooting army double turns you. But if you could not double turn them in return, you have no chance against them.
Well, that's exactly what I'm getting at, is all of these mechanics lessen the impact of double turns. Like, the best feeling in the world is to get a double turn, like win the priority roll, and then choose to give it away and not take the double turn, because you know that you can't capitalize on it because your opponent has played that way.
Yes. So I hate double turns in a competitive game. I absolutely despise. Part of this is because of where Stormcast is at right now. The outcome of a game coming down to a single die roll.
I hate when that happens, but I also recognize that there are so many decisions that lead to that point, and almost certainly some decision made along the way was not the right one, where it leads to a point where a dice roll determines the outcome. There are some where legit, like, both players have played flawlessly, made the best decisions possible, and then it does come down to a dice roll. But if that's in like round 4 or 5, I'm okay with it.
That's fine.
But if it's round 2, no way. I hate those games. Those are the worst.
What I want is, if we're keeping the double turn going into 4th edition, I want more impact to come from that decision. the battle plans that offer some sort of significant benefit or significant
Makes a big
penalty
difference.
is a huge thing, and I
Love
love
those.
those battle plans.
We'll talk all
Then
about
No,
them.
the
no,
double
no.
turn is fine.
I don't think the double turn is causing bad games because of the battle plans necessarily. I think it's causing bad games because you can control it. You can control it with the number
Well,
of
the
drops you
battle,
have.
yeah,
You can
yeah.
I agree.
determine whether
Drop
it'll
game,
be.
the
You
drop
can
game
you
is a
can
problem.
determine whether the game is going to be a trading game. Meaning, let's say I am guaranteed to win priority. I have magic fingers. I can always roll 6s on priority. I can determine if that game is going to be a trading game or if that game is where I double you and I win the game. Like if it's gonna be you go, I go. I don't think players should have that power. I think that's way too much. Like, and predictability, like Paul said, is fun. Double turns are fun. I think
Yeah.
players should not be in control of it because that puts too much power in your hands. I think you should just roll a dice, and then if you win, you have to go first.
You have to go.
So
And then you
so
plan
long,
for the double
again,
turn.
so long as the battle plans or the core mechanics of the game offer some sort of counterbalance to acting twice in a row, because that's
If
real.
If that
it's really
exists, you can't force people to go first then. Right? It's one or the other. You can't incentivize going second as a countermeasure to a double turn if you're forcing people to take the double turn. Because there are a lot of times where I don't take double turns and those feel really good.
Are you guys familiar with like momentum algorithms in like sports video games and stuff? Like when you play against AI, depending what level you're at, but they'll adjust their momentum based on like the momentum that you're having. And sometimes that can play in your favor, and actually if you're like really building up and getting a lot of chances, eventually you'll score, right? And it's part of like the algorithm of the game. Part of me sometimes sees this double turn mechanic as a momentum mechanic, and I would love if there was some way in which actively you had a better chance of avoiding or winning the double turn based on what you did in your turn, whether that's like a plus to your roll or whatever. I don't know.
I'll word that differently, John. I like the battle plans where it says if you are the second player, you can do this. You can disrupt your opponent's phase. You can knock out an objective out of the park. I really like those things. I think those battle plans work really well in determining whether the player always takes the priority. My problem is I don't think you should get to put that power in the player's hand from first battle round.
Yes.
I think it should be totally random who goes first.
Yes.
And then from second battle round onwards, whoever wins that roll, then they get to decide, am I going to give this away or am I going to take this?
I'm on board. See, I thought you meant every round you're forced to take it if you win the roll off.
No, just the first.
We'll talk about this later with the battle regiment discussion.
With battle regiment,
Fishing for doubles is a terrible, terrible mechanic. I hate that you can build a list that wants to go second and is now currently encouraged to go second in this season, and then fishes for a double turn, and then it usually just wins off that, right? If you're playing against a less experienced player, that is terrible. That is terrible game design. I don't want to be that harsh on it, but it just doesn't feel good for anyone. Like I hate Croak teleporting.
They've realized that people hate getting doubled. They've made all these mechanics to, if you go second, you can do this. But then what they're not realizing, it's that first crucial turn where they're making it go second and taking that advantage is problematic.
It's really weird, right? It's kind of like inconsistent with the rest of the philosophy of the game that you can control who goes first with your list in round one. The rest of the game doesn't mesh with that idea. Like it's designed around it, but this thing kind of like sticks out as a starting point, and then nothing else kind of is like, yeah, that makes sense because this exists too. It just doesn't flow naturally. I don't know how else to describe it. Like, I really, really hope we'll talk about that with Battle Regiment, but it's stupid. It's the rest of the turns 2, 3, 4, 5, totally fine. But you should not get to decide who is going first with your list.
Yeah, and I think as someone who, had to learn this game and had not played war games before, tabletop war games, like the double turn was like something that was really felt really punitive for a very long time. I eventually sort of learned to love it and understand it and prepare for it. But I do think it's very valuable, again, going back to this momentum thing, given that if someone takes it, you have a very good chance of getting it the next turn or the turn after.
It's a big risk. It's a big risk to take a double.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so
And the thing is, like,
I
I
think
want
that part of
every
it's
player
great.
to account for the double. I don't want someone to just build a list where
Totally.
they're like, I am guaranteed to go first, so I will always pretty much be playing for the double, and you won't be.
Totally.
So I'm
Yeah,
playing
totally.
40k, you go, I go, and you are playing Age of Sigmar, where you have to account for the double turn.
Yeah.
Like, I don't like that. I just think if you're gonna have the double turn be such a core part of AOS, everyone should have to account for it at all times.
Mm-hmm.
The one downside of that, Mergonk, is if you have gameplay like battle tactics, which encourages you to not engage with your opponent, to not encourage being as not being aggressive in some way, just moving stuff and not killing stuff in particular, you're going to end up in scenarios that really just grind the game to a halt.
But that's a whole other problem for
Yeah, that's a
whole
whole
I know,
that's
other
something
I know,
that we can
I know.
talk about at battle tactics.
Yeah,
gotta
we
look-
talked
I
about
gotta
secondaries in
yeah.
the past, but yeah,
Yeah.
secondaries are a different conversation
Yeah.
entirely.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
I'm just talking about in pure primary game point. Like if a beginner were to start this game, how do you make them like the double turn? And the answer is that. I don't think you should control it.
Can I ask you guys something?
Mhm.
Like often this is referred to as secondaries versus primaries. I'm assuming that's something from 40k.
It's a 40
Yeah.
But my question is like, it doesn't seem like a secondary to me. It's 40% of the points you're gonna get,
well,
right?
that's the thing. It's just 40%.
It's also true in 40k. In 40k,
it's very
you
close
score,
to half.
But it's
in
not.
40k is 45. Yeah, it's 15
secondary.
points of secondary in 40k. The issue with we'll discuss battle tactic. We'll get to it.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Okay.
Maybe the term could be updated. Yeah. So yeah, I would pause it, and I would love to hear some more discussion about this. If you guys are watching down in the comments or on Discord, I am saying that reactive gameplay feels good because it is the counterbalancing mechanism for double turns. I think double turns are on the low end, they're super fun when you're playing super casual games. On the high end, they're super fun because you're playing around them and using reactive gameplay. I understand people in the middle probably maybe don't like them. But I think more reactive gameplay could probably push them towards our side of the argument, which double turns are cool and good. And if you're struggling with double turns, then maybe you should get good. Okay. Let's talk about
Perfect.
core battalions, which I consider to be one of the greatest sins of 3rd edition. But we need some context first. We need to talk about what battalions were in 2nd edition so we can really appreciate just how terrible these are. In 2nd edition, all battalions were unified. If you had units in a battalion, they all came down at the same time. But there were no universal battalions. It's not like when you formed your army, you put them into battalions like these. Some armies had battalions that were good and worth using and had really powerful effects. Like Fyreslayers could fight twice, which was insane because they also fought first all the time. And they did crushing amounts of damage, and they were super resilient. And then other armies had like fluffy garbage loser battalions that you would never take. And also, I think a lot of people forgot about this. Battalions used to cost points, a lot of points, like 150 to 200 points in some cases. And
what?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then for every battalion you took, you could also take another enhancement. So it was a very different system. You were playing hundreds of points down, but in exchange, you got fewer drops, a command point, because it came with an extra command point, and another enhancement. So you could take another artifact or spell or whatever.
Yep.
And usually in a vacuum, on its own, the point cost wasn't worth the battalion. So what happened was some armies had battalions that were good and cool, and they brought them and they had fewer drops. And then some armies just didn't. And it would be pretty common to have matchups where it's like 10 drops versus 10 drops. Like double-digit drops were a lot more common. Everything was a lot cheaper in 2nd edition. And they thought, did I miss anything? I don't know. I think that's a pretty good summary of 2nd edition.
Yeah.
That's
okay.
fine.
And some armies had, like, Khorne used to be able to fight twice with Bloodthirsters. Like 3 Bloodthirsters were near each other, they would all fight. And it was, I gotta say, the one thing missing is that it's super fluffy. All of these battalions were on point when it came to narrative, right? So I like that about them. But everything else was not good.
Yes.
Moving to 3rd edition, they decided to basically squint at the 40k rules for detachments and say, yeah, let's do that. Like, this is a very poorly done copy of what 40k detachments were in 8th edition, 9th edition. And you can see it because, like, these don't make sense. When would you take a leader and then 2 monsters?
If you were you took it if you were taking monsters.
No, but the buff isn't good
Yeah.
That's
yeah,
okay.
that's the problem.
So the
It's not
issue
good.
yes, the issue with core battalions comes down to the disparity in their effectiveness. Because
Yes.
Vanguard, Linebreaker, and Grand Battery are useless. They are useless.
There's a very niche case for Vanguard throughout the years, but pretty much useless. Yeah.
Right. One of the things that I have always said is that those 3 battalions they need to be stronger. And this is normally about the discussion for Battle Regiment because of how powerful Battle Regiment is. I think that if like Vanguard, as an example, let you issued auto run 6 gave you the ability to issue the command in addition to the once that you could normally do it, then we would see more of these in play. Or if every unit in the battalion got it, then it would see more play. But it just doesn't.
Mhm.
And that meant that really the only battalions that ever see play from the core rulebook are Battle Regiment, Warlord, and occasionally Command Entourage.
And occasionally another battle regiment, because sometimes you need 2 drops.
But sometimes you need you have to
Yeah,
take
yeah.
yeah.
I think it's a problem of persistent versus singular buffs. So the
Mhm.
entire point of Vanguard is to issue. I don't know what is this. It's reroll charges are like auto run
Right.
6.
Auto
You can
run
do this
6.
once per game, and you have to take an entire battalion for that.
Right.
Battle Regiment has a persistent effect to the flow of the game.
Correct.
Taking a Warlord and having an extra enhancement has a persistent effect throughout the flow of the game.
Yes.
The only things that needs to change is when they make these battalions, they need to think about that, and so always need to add effects that are persistent to the whole game. Like, what if Vanguard, everyone in that Vanguard battalion could just receive a charge, reroll charge or auto run 6 for free throughout the whole game?
Every turn. Yeah. That would be That would be fantastic. That would be fantastic.
And that's like a way for you to save command points. Prioritize something that you want to prioritize, which is rerolling charges and auto running 6. It would allow you to save your command points for other things, like, I don't know, like redeploying, a la defense, unleash hell, whatever.
Right.
It's ridiculous to me that battle regiment exists in the way it does. Like, why can you take 1 monster or 1 artillery? Why not 2 of 1 or even more of them? Like, it's baffling to me. There's so much.
It's wild. Also, it has a 2 troop requirement, 2 to 5, like with 2 minimum.
Yeah,
it should be like.
You know, here's another thing. Why does Warlord allow you to take more troops or more heroes? There's 0 benefit to doing that.
There's no reason for it.
You straight up are making your army worse by doing it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Why would you do
Yeah,
that?
because you could literally take another Warlord.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Doesn't make sense at
There's
all.
2 Warlord battalions on that picture. I don't know why you'd take 1. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, yeah.
It doesn't make any sense.
Battle Regiment becomes the default. And when Battle Regiment becomes the default, the game gets weird. And this has been one of the things I've hated the most about 3rd edition. Despite all my praise, I really do like playing 3rd edition, but I hate Battle Regiment. I hate the impact that it has on list building. I hate the impact it has on the metagame of playing competitive games. I hate the fact that it enables armies to go second and then fish for a double turn. That I think is terrible gameplay. I hate these. I think this is the worst thing in 3rd edition. I can't get over how bad they are. They also make enhancements super hard to pick up, right? If you want extra enhancements, you have to take 3 heroes minimum. 2 of them have to be sub-commanders. Some armies just don't have sub-commanders at all. So they had to create special battalions for things like Gargants, and if you want to take them as ogres, you better hope you have a good use for those sub-commanders. Oh, you want to take 2 more enhancements? Because you want to take an extra spell and an artifact or whatever? Yeah, I hope you have 6 heroes in your list.
Yeah.
Which, you know, may have been okay in 2nd edition where heroes legit were like 70 points and you could fill these out and not feel terrible. But heroes are like 100 plus now. Like, you're not fitting 6 heroes in your list. It's super rare. These are just god awful. And we'll talk about the seasonal ones after, because I think there's a good trend happening, but it really baffles me that they never updated these. This feels like this was the first draft and they shipped the book with the first draft in it. Like, they just didn't playtest it or didn't care enough to change it. Like, the rules are printed, we're not changing it. Just let it roll, see what happens. That's what it feels like to me.
Yeah.
Well,
But like,
I think.
none.
Go ahead, McGraw.
No. Jack, you can go ahead.
My the one that I despise is Battle Regiment for all of the reasons that we've talked about. It's needed to change for a long time, and it just hasn't. Yes, I understand that there are some armies like Lumineth that live and die by this because of how their army functions. And I do not think that the fix is for Battle Regiment. Frankly, I think the fix should have been to just fix that army design so that if they get hit before they get their defenses up, they're crippled. It's not good.
So,
Well, yeah, no. I think Lumineth's problem isn't just like a turn 1 alpha hit. It's also like if somebody else makes them go first and then doubles them, that's a huge problem for Lumineth.
That's a huge
usually.
Thing. Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So, but that sort of goes back to our whole conversation. If Battle Regiment is really leading to people playing for the who gets turn 1 priority.
Playing for the priority.
That whole system of the
yes.
connection between Battle Regiment and turn 1 priority needs to go away.
It needs
so
to
like
go away.
You could literally just delete Battle Regiment and this game would automatically become better overnight.
Yes.
There's so many changes that you could make to battalions. It's almost like we could have a whole episode about just this, right? So I don't want to go too far in depth about this because it feels like the system is so poorly done currently that what they do to it is going to be probably the most revolutionary change, right? Like even just
Agreed.
the season 1 battalions.
Right?
Yeah, like the battalions we've been getting since then have all been exploring different ideas for what battalions could be. And so I'm hopeful that 4th edition is going to have really cool stuff there.
Yes.
One of the ideas I think that they should explore is that all battalions are unified, because then there's a reason to put more, like if you're going to keep this whole player who drops first gets to choose nonsense. But if like Warlord, for example, was all unified, like, yeah, I'll put another hero in there because I don't want an extra drop. There's incentive to fill out the battalion instead of literally making your list worse. So that's something. It's also more intuitive, right? Like I have a battalion, all the armies or all the regiments of Renown do this. They're all in a unified battalion. They all drop at the same time. That just makes sense. Like if you're looking at the game for the first time, you're like, well, why are these 5 units together in a group if they're not deploying together? But then those 5 units are in a group and they, like, why don't they just both do this?
I'll make that thought more comprehensive. I think you delete Battle Regiment controlling the turn priority. That's step 1, right?
Mm-hmm.
Step 2, you make all these battalions unified. 3, you make the turn order like a random dice roll. And the reason I say everything should be unified if the turn order is random is because counter deploying is actually a really useful tool.
Yes.
If you just have more units like we do in a Stormcast army, then you will counter deploy perfectly to your opponent knowing the turn order is random. But if you're taking battalions or benefits, then you are forced to deploy those units together, which means it changes how you deploy and you don't have as much information as you would normally do.
That totally flips the script. It becomes better to have more drops. It's like you're not getting fewer drops instead of value, you're getting more drops instead of value. More drops is inherently useful, right? Like having the perfect deployment, especially in an army like Stormcast, is super important.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't want to harp on core battalions too much because we're going to be talking about them tangentially as well in the future. Okay, sorry. Is there any redeeming quality for these things? Can you guys think of good arguments for them? Like, is this better than what it was in 2nd edition? Because I would actually argue this is worse. The fact that Battle Regiment has become available to every army, and it has become the standard. I think this feels worse than what battalions were in 2nd edition.
So this treats the issue that battalions had in 2nd edition, which is the inequity between armies. Since every army has access to these, that means that armies that have insanely good battalions don't curb stomp armies that just don't have that for whatever reason. So again, I really like the concept of core battalions. The execution was very, very bad with this example.
Aside from Redemption Brotherhood, does any army use its faction battalion?
setting
Gargants
aside
do it. That's about
Gargants.
it.
Well,
Okay.
but Gargants are in a special case
Because they can't
of
use the other
way that-
ones. Yeah.
because they can't use them. Yes.
I'm trying to think of which factions even have battalions. They like
Khorne,
didn't even make these for
Seraphon,
some of them.
Like
They didn't. From what I remember, IDK and Fireslayers don't even have battalions in their book.
yeah.
Right.
Khorne and Seraphon do. I know that.
The answer to your question, Paul, is no.
No.
Nobody
uses
uses because the only time you want to use these battalions is if they give you an extra enhancement or they give
Right.
you unified.
I
Right.
like
the rest of the
Go on.
if the rest of the buffs are once per game. Even the Cities of Sigmar battalion, they were touting it like, oh, you can take 3 different Fusiliers and like an ogre and a cannon in it. I'm like, why would I want to do that for 1 free all-out attack? Why can't I
Right.
just take them in like a warlord instead or something?
I like the idea of infusing more flavor in armies. I don't think core battalions are the way to do it because it's good to have some things that are equalizers, especially when it comes to how you get enhancements, right? If the way you get enhancements is through a warlord battalion, okay, well some armies will be better at it, some armies will be worse. And that's okay. That's basically faction flavor baked into how they react to the core things. Kind of like some armies get more benefit out of +1 hit from all out attack, some armies get more benefit from +1 save.
Right.
Faction battalions I don't think are a good idea. I think it's better that they're neutral and universal.
Yes.
Okay.
Agreed.
So that is the good point, is that it has standardized this system. But man, was it a misfire. They really, really botched this one.
I really think like this would change. It wouldn't. I don't know how much it would change things, but if they made the change to where they made the other battalions, like the Grand Battery, Linebreaker, Entourage, and Vanguard, less restrictive, and instead of once per game all-out attack or whatever, it was every turn. Every turn, someone from this battalion can just get it for free.
I still don't think people would use them. In the
Probably.
current paradigm, Battle Regiment and Warlord are just way better.
Yeah.
Free
Battle
command
Regiment
point
would
return.
just have to go. Like, I'm surprised
Yeah.
it was allowed to stay the way it is, considering what they did to Arcane Tome.
Yeah. And it's probably too late for them to get rid of it now in a battle scroll, like 6 months till the new edition. It's probably too late.
Yeah, they could. I mean, after LVO, they could be like, yeah, Battle Regiment's gone. A lot of pros would be mad at them for that because they love Battle Regiment, but who cares?
All right, let's move on here. Let's talk about army design. And there's a lot of different facets to this one. So I have a slide here. I don't know how the people are going to take this one. I think there's lots of different ways to talk about this, but I kind of thought this would be a fun way to talk about how they structured some battle tomes. I think there are some battle tomes that are flavorful and strong without being too powerful. I think there are some battle tomes that are flavorful, but they ended up too powerful, and that kind of ruined it. It kind of made it like just not fun. There are some battle tomes that are either too weak, despite being flavorful. Some that are just bad, like just bad gameplay design. And then there's even others that are just they might be strong, but they have bad flavor, right? I couldn't fit every battle tome on here without it getting really, really tiny, but obviously, the ones we want to talk about are the 4 books at the top, which have been some of the grossest books they've released in the history of the game, all coming out in this recent block. Had to take multiple rounds of nerfs to get them to the point where they're no longer breaking the game, although Caradron, I think, might be due for another nerf.
They're all at 55% still.
Yes, they're all still incredibly strong. I think Gits are down to 50 now, though. I could be mistaken about that.
Yeah, to be honest, I think that on release, Gits was... I don't know what they were smoking. I wish they would share. Now, Gits are fine. Gits are fine.
Yeah, Gits
They're
feel
fine.
fine. Gits
They're
generally feel fine.
It really was mostly a points issue and like Squigs
Yes,
just being too efficient. And
Yes.
rather than
Scareguard was like 130-point hero or something.
Oh my
I was like,
God,
what
yeah.
the hell is
160.
happening here?
Yeah.
Like, what?
Bastion.
Well, it was
Yeah, I
one,
was like,
he was
my-
160, and it was just like, oh my gosh.
I remember Bastion's still at 300.
Yep.
Okay, so Gits came out. I want to talk about the flavor of these arms without just talking about the power, because power creep is another discussion. I am so impressed with 3rd edition and how they've just gone back to the drawing board on these armies and made them feel as flavorful as possible. So many armies feel so cool on the battlefield. When you play against Gits, it feels like you're playing against Gits. You look at these models, you're like, yep, they're doing what they look like they should be doing. And the way the army is moving and trying to do things feels like the way a bunch of, mushroom addicted psychopaths trying to stab you in the knees and do all these tricks and everything. And then he's got these lumbering Troggoths who are like, that feels right. Everything they're doing feels right.
Yes.
Bone Reapers, I think, also feel that way, right? They are tough, elite. immovable
And,
but
like,
slow.
Organized, like they're very flexible units,
Yes.
and it's through their organization, and it's
The idea that
nice.
they just like on a dime, their heads flip around and they're now in a new mode because of the orders they've been
Right.
issued. All that feels on point. The strengths and weaknesses of both of these armies are high, right? Like Gits have big strengths but also big weaknesses. Bone Reapers have big strengths but also big weaknesses. Balance issues aside, like maybe they're too efficient, maybe they're too powerful, maybe their weaknesses aren't big enough, but this is a huge improvement over how the game used to be. Most of second
Yes.
edition was very bland. Armies mostly didn't have cool, like aside from battalions, units kind of just did what the War Scroll said, plus buffs, whatever buffs you could have. Like there was a lot of homogenous things. Fight first was everywhere, fight twice was everywhere, teleporting was everywhere, reserves were everywhere. Like most armies had some way to teleport. I remember at some point, this was the common theme. It was like, it's not does your army teleport, it's how does your army teleport. You always ask your opponent, what are your teleports? What are your reserves? What are you doing that's going to mess besides normal movement? Like normal movement almost didn't exist in second edition. It was all about just mobility. And they've stripped all that back, right? A lot of abilities that used to do mortal wounds have been turned into auto wounds, which is cool. Charge mortal wounds are a big thing now. Like the way they've gone through these books and made them feel more flavorful, I think should be commended. Third edition has been really, really good. I think there's a few that I really want to point out that aren't that way. But I also just want to commend Blades of Khorne, Heat Knights of Slaanesh, and Night Haunt. I think were 3 of the best books designed in this edition.
Flavor-wise, definitely.
Flavor-wise, and they weren't too powerful. I don't think any of these books have been too powerful at any point, right?
No, they have been. They have been,
Yes.
but it's not been like a oh my god, you just missed the mark by a mile. It was just like you missed the thing. You forgot what this could do.
Yeah, maybe like they were like maybe 5 to 10% too good, right? Not like the top 4 that I have over there. These were in line. Like if the top 4 didn't exist, the Blades of Khorne and Slaanesh would be like, oh, what are you guys doing? This is ridiculous, right? Night Haunt. Remember how good Night Haunt was when it came out? Like it was the top army.
Yes.
And it was like a joke until the last battle scroll. It was like a joke. So that should tell you about the power creep. But I love the flavor in Khorne. I love all of their fancy movement tricks. I love all the buffing stacking that they do. I like how the army feels with and without buffs. It feels very different, and that's very appropriate for an army that's trying to get the blood god to look on them and get their boon. Slaanesh feels great. I think from a fluff perspective, like the temptations are so cool, right?
Yes.
Night Haunt feels great. I think they could maybe push them a little bit further, but in terms of like that feeling of relentless hordes, like a slow moving horde just kind of pushing through your castle wall, you can't tie them down and all the weapons just go through them. They're all about terror tactics. I think all that stuff is on point. And I want to contrast that with the bottom 4 books, because what the hell are these armies doing? Daughters of Cain, I think, is the worst example. Also, Marathi and the Bow Snakes, we called it in our April Fool's video.
Right.
This, I think, might be the worst designed army, because there's a unit in the army that just breaks every rule of the game and is also super important for the army. Like, just too important. So I hate that. Bone Splitters, enough said, right? That's just terrible. Cruel Boys, half their really cool stuff is on a 4-up once per game, which feels awful. They've had to get...
not anymore, I don't think. I think that they changed that, didn't they?
No, all their tricks are still on 4-ups. Like a lot of their stuff.
No, the problem with Cruel Boys is they play like they should not be a castle army. This should be the army that plays kind of like Beasts of Chaos, but gets to do certain like tricky things. Like they turn this trick on when they're near you.
The way the models look, the way the rules are written, and the way those two things interact just doesn't make sense for those models.
Yeah, this plays like a castle army. This plays like a Stormcast castle army. I have no idea why.
Yeah, for the same reason, I think Daughters of Cain shouldn't be playing this way. It shouldn't be that you have Marathi tanking everything while she tells Bow Snakes to double tap. You look at this army of like religious fanatics with knives everywhere, and the way they end up playing is shooting you from 24 inches away while
not
a big snake
so
tanks
much
you.
Anymore. Not so much.
I mean, not so much anymore because people have realized
but...
battle tactics. Yeah. But the thing is, the rest of the army doesn't feel as good as, let's say, Blades of Khorne, because it's sort of the book where they did not innovate at all. They sort of just left it from like the second edition book, and they just tuned everything down except for Marathi. Marathi stayed the same.
She got a little weaker.
Instead of having,
much.
Yeah, but it's like they sort of like just made it like a. I would say Daughters of Cain is like as close as Stormcast is to a 2.5 book,
Yeah.
essentially. Where
Yeah.
Marathi got
Yeah.
something new, but everything else basically stayed the same. And they
Lumineth,
need like a design uplift.
I actually think more thought was put into the Stormcast book than Daughters of Cain and Lumineth, because we got new stuff like Holy Commands, we got a lot of War Scrolls updated. We have mount traits in addition to all these other enhancements. Like, I actually think the Stormcast book is better designed than a lot of other books, despite all of our complaints with it, which I'm not going to say aren't valid. But
Right.
I mean, Lumineth didn't even change anything. They just nerfed a bunch of things and they just released the book again.
Yep.
yeah, it's like they wrote it before the Stormcast book. Frankly, it's just bad. It's bad, and because the design is so bad, they kind of just fell off the face of the earth when it comes to win rate. And like Techless can't carry the faction anymore because of Primal Dice. Yeah, Lumineth just need
Yeah,
to
they basically
up.
Lumineth and Daughters are like two sides of the same coin. They made these two books. The core design philosophy did not exist or was badly implemented, and so they basically revolve around like their god models that allow them to do something really stupid because otherwise the faction wouldn't exist on the board without them. It's like that.
And the last one I want to put in this like just objectively bad design pile is Tzeentch, which for the longest time, this army, if the Kronspine didn't exist, which we haven't talked about yet today, by the way, I can't believe we made it this far without talking about the Kronspine. If the Kronspine didn't exist, this would probably be the worst army in the game, right? Like, it just carries so much. And
right
because,
now, especially.
Because the only thing this army, I know Caleb's going to yell at me later, but for the most
Caleb,
part,
Caleb is on 6 Vanguard. He's fine.
I know. He's pivoting into allies, which should tell you how bad the army is. This army is so one-dimensional and so focused on spellcasting, which, okay, I get that from a flavor perspective. It should be. It's Tzeentch. The problem is, mechanically, there's lots of ways to make a magical army that doesn't just cast spells and do d6 mortals until your opponent's dead. There's so many different ways to achieve an army feeling magical that doesn't involve casting rules. And now that Primal Dice are in the game, well, you can see exactly how that's a big flaw, right? Like, the magic system itself is bad. Like, 2d6 casting in Age of Sigmar, that's a relic from first edition. And I really like what they've done with Primal Dice. I'd like to see them push it further. But yeah, Tzeentch needs a redesign ground up. Like, there has to be more to the army than just d6 mortal wound spells. They need to have some other avenue of playing. An Army of Renown would be a really good place for them to explore something like that. Like how Sylvaneth can now have an entirely different army that's not just teleport charging. And I think even if it's weak, I think it's cool. Like, it's good that armies have alternate playstyles. And
you know what I would really like?
Yeah. What's that?
This is gonna sound, maybe this is too much bookkeeping. So Tzeentch is like a predictor of the future. They like change, right? One of the annoying things about Tzeentch is the Destiny dice, because I feel like every other Chaos faction earns its resource. Slaanesh has to earn its depravity. Khorne has to earn its blood tide. Nurgle, in a sense, has to earn its I don't know what the fuck it's called. What is it called? Contagion points?
Sounds right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tzeentch doesn't. They just start off with 9, and it's like sometimes the most game-breaking thing ever. Because if they roll like, I had a game yesterday where my opponent has 7 5s and 1 like 6, and I'm like, oh, cool. So like, what you're telling me is if I shoot 6 long strikes into you, I will do literally nothing to you.
So are you leaning towards every time they can't successfully cast a spell, they roll a die?
No. Just you can do something like when your opponent rolls a dice. Say it'll be odd or it'll be even, or say it'll be a 1 2 3 or 4 5 6. And if you do that correctly, you get a destiny dice. You have predicted their destiny. Well, I would really like that. Like, Tzeentch needs to do things that predict their like that sort of act as like a master change where they have predicted this movement, because Tzeentch allows its own followers to die and fail because it's part of the master plan.
Yeah.
Right.
So if you do some stupid crap like, oh, like this thing is marked for death or whatever, and you will kill it next turn, I know that, I get something. I don't know. I'm just spitballing. But yeah, Tzeentch needs to be more than just I can kill you if you're in my 18-inch kill box range.
Right.
They could also be a good shooting army. That would be a good way to go. I don't know. It needs to not be a one-dimensional army. And one-dimensional armies just are bad design. There should always be a second way to play an army. Is there anything else from this list we want to shout out? I was thinking about putting Sylvaneth down in the bad design pile, even if they're a good army. I think having an army that only teleport charges, like that's what the book pushes you into.
No, I think
that's bad
Sylvaneth is
design.
at the borderline. No, I think Sylvaneth
No.
is borderline. Because you can play that army a couple of ways. You can teleport charge at them, but you can also play Tree Lord Sentinels that just sort of stop pylons and they just stand in their woods and do a lot of crap. You can do like spell heavy builds where you just have screens and just tons of like spell slinging through the wild woods. And
that does
stuff
feel
like
very
that. So
Sylvaneth-y, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, so I think Sylvaneth's fine. I am going to like do the thing, and because until Vulcan Flameseek, I'm gonna call out Fire Slayers, and this could just be like a symptom of them just not having a model range compared to the every other book here, because they only have what, like 2 units and like 6 heroes. That's it basically,
Yeah.
6 or 7 heroes and 2
Pretty
units.
small.
But that army needs like a more interesting way to interact with the board rather than just moving up and hitting you in the face or like just standing there with Heartguard Berserkers.
I thought they did a really good job with the Fire Slayers 3rd edition book, in some ways, right? I think they missed the mark by making Orc Hearthguard just not good anymore. I guess they didn't want them to be a shooting army anymore, which fine, they're berserkers, they're melee guys, like that's okay, I guess from a flavor standpoint. I also really like the Magma Drots actually became good, and the Rune Suns make the battle line, like in Lofnir. I thought that was cool. And the heroes that aren't leaders, I thought that was really cool because they supported it with really good artifacts and really powerful abilities. So I think Fire Slayers, I would have put them into the middle.
I feel like sometimes they don't feel like Slayers because so like other than the Grimrat Berserker, nothing in this army fights on death. I think it should. I think that should just be like a core mechanic of this army.
Volkite Berserkers do.
Yeah, once per game, but I think everyone should have that. All the foot units should have, all the heroes should have that. Like maybe not maybe not the Magma Drots because they already have the what's it called, the Volcanic Blood.
The Volcanic Blood. I think that would be great.
I think if all the foot heroes and all the things could fight when they die, I think it'd be nice.
Yeah,
maybe once per game, so you just activate it with an opportunity cost.
There's balancing problems there, which is how do you balance how much damage this army does in melee? Do you balance it around assuming they're going to get to fight on death or not? Because what if they're fighting against shooting in melee or sorry, shooting in magic? You know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying it's an insurmountable challenge, but
they already have. They've got bonuses to rally, right? Yeah. And they've got auras of ward saves and whatnot. So there's interaction there. I think the entire Fire Slayers army, with the exception of the Magma Drots fighting on death, would be super cool.
If they were like a porcupine army, so like take the concept of like the volcanic blood from Magma Drots and put that into fighting on death for the infantry. Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I don't want it to be too much bookkeeping.
Yeah, but something,
I
don't know.
Maybe like a prayer.
I think that there's just a limited model range, but I think like Fire Slayers and there was one other army I wanted to talk about that doesn't feel very thematic. Well, currently, actually, it doesn't matter because they're gonna get a new battle scroll soon. Sorry, a battle tome.
You're talking about
Flesh Eater Courts doesn't feel very thematic.
I think it does. The way you summon just hordes of dudes all around. It doesn't feel like a Flesh Eater Court army, but it feels like a zombie ghoul army.
Yeah. What I mean is, it feels more like Soulblight Gravelords. It does not feel like what Flesh Eater Court says in the lore, like with the delusions of grandeur and the knights and the
I'll agree with that.
Causing delusions among other enemies. It doesn't do that. It's sort of just I have a bunch of recursion dudes. I'm going to buff them up and kill you.
Yeah, and that's not what Flesh Eater Court should be.
Yeah,
I agree. Well,
new book's coming soon.
New book's coming.
When the new book comes out and the new models come out and they actually have bits of armor and everything on them, then it'll feel wrong. Right now, they're just a bunch of mindless cannibals. So, from a model perspective,
I would also say, like, and maybe our tome isn't in here, I would put it somewhere between Flavorful, Strong, and Bad Design, but not because of its power. It has nothing to do with the power level of Stormcast. It's just there are things in that book that don't feel like how they are in the lore.
I feel like Stormcast are in all three categories.
Like Fulminators feel like it looks like their Fulminators feel flavorful, Raptors feel flavorful, but there's some things that's like when I look at a Star Drake, I'm like, does this seem like what a Star Drake would be doing?
And like the sub factions don't really matter. Like the only one that
it's like Hammers of Sigmar is a 6-sub ward. Like what is it? It's what it's like. It's bad flavor, but good design in the sense that I mean, we call it good because we have at least we can do damage. We can actually like kill things, but it's like
there's aspects of the book that are good. Like I like that Stormcast hit really hard. I like that we teleport in the best way. I like that we have reserves. Like the translocation and scions have aged better as as every book comes out and just strips these things away from other armies.
Right.
But we came out the gate.
But my question is like, so
my
when we talk about 3.0 book design, what I mean is like they are bound to change War Scrolls in every book, right?
Yeah.
That just happens. War Scrolls just get an upgrade or like they get a nerf depending on how good they were. If we weren't taking War Scrolls into account, because it's a guaranteed that whenever a new book comes out, they'll upgrade some War Scrolls, like rend, damage, attacks, whatever. If we weren't just talking about War Scrolls, would you say our book is like designed well or like is flavorful?
No, there's too many units that are just they don't mesh. Like there's no cohesive structure holding the army together. Like we've created a playstyle which I'm not sure is intentional. There's and with a lot of other armies, it's like, yeah, this is how the army should play. It makes sense. The Gargants walk up, they body slam, they push, they throw stuff around. Ossiarch Bone Reapers, they play like what they look like they should. There's I don't understand what the vision for how Stormcast are supposed to play, how they approach a battle. Like Annihilators nail it. That's how Stormcast should play.
Yes.
They drop in, they charge in, they do a bunch of damage, and they die.
Yep.
With good saves. Like they're not fragile, right?
Right.
But everything else, I think, is just us taking the rules as we've been given and just forming strategies around it.
Correct.
I don't think.
Yeah, so I would say some War Scrolls have a sprinkling of flavor, but if
Right.
we assume War Scroll upgrades are a guarantee, I don't think our book is designed from like this is the vision for the army.
Yeah, it's all over the place. It's aged better than a lot of other books. I'll say that in terms of flavor.
I'm not talking about power here. I'm just talking about like, if I don't account for War Scroll upgrades, because then am I getting the feel of playing Stormcast? And I would argue that I am in some ways, but at the same time, like I don't feel any different from how I used to see this in second edition. Like if I also play like Ossiarch Bone Reapers, I can tell there's a noticeable difference in how I feel about playing this army from second edition.
Yeah. I think our battle tome, our army is very poorly designed. I think some of our War Scrolls are great, but the army itself,
there's like
it does
I think
not
it's just
feel good.
inflated. It's just there's so many units.
There's some nuggets. There's a lot of gold nuggets in that pile of trash.
Right.
There's some things I really like about the Stormcast book, but overall, I think it could be better. Okay.
And at this point, I would be good just removing 20% of the War Scrolls. If GW is at a point where it is too hard to balance the 80 War Scrolls that are in our book, get rid of some of them. It's fine.
Combine some of them.
Merge them.
We'll say
merge paladins. Like honestly, like paladins,
insane,
they could just be all about flavor. They could have a standard weapon.
We will do a video about that, guys. I promise.
Yes.
We will. We'll get to it.
Okay, fine. All right.
Seasonal rules.
Go quick. It's getting...
I want to shout out Assistant Ref in the chat. Says Stormcast base troops don't match the lore at all. They're supposed to be superheroes, and yet the base troops are deeply disappointing compared to more modern releases. Yeah,
yes.
Why are Liberators 2 attacks and 2 wounds? Like, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So,
Assistant Ref, I would just want to add to saying we are the only army other than Ogres that has infantry on 40 millimeters, and that is not represented in the game in any meaningful way.
No, not at all. It's actually a really, really big penalty to be.
Yeah, it makes it harder to fight in ranks. It's annoying.
Yes.
Take up more space, easier to body. All right, seasonal rules. You guys love bounty hunters, right?
So, I love the seasonal rules. I think that each GHB has gotten better and better. I hope that this trend continues. I love it. Yes, some of the seasonal rules kind of miss the mark a little, like who's taking wizard finders unless you just don't know what else to do with it, right? Like, but by and large, the seasonal rules have been better and better, and I hope this trend continues.
Yeah, I've got some of my favorites here, just throughout the seasons that I wanted to point out.
Yep.
Primal Magic is a big win. Like, that's awesome. Love it. Awesome. Bounty Hunters, like maybe the most hated thing in the entire edition. People really hated Bounty Hunters, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. It's not. It wasn't good for the game. Do you guys remember this classic command ability here? No retreat, no surrender.
Yep.
Yeah, that unit can't make pile-in moves, but you can add one to the attacks characteristic. That saw a lot of play, right?
Yeah.
What?
I loved Strike at the opening. Like I said earlier when we were talking about heroic actions, I really like this. It makes the melee profiles on a hero way more valid, and I hope it comes back. I think it was really cool.
Yeah.
Have it all the time.
Yeah.
Tunnel Master.
I really like. I actually quite like. No retreat, no surrender. I think that was a. I don't know why people didn't use it. Maybe it was like a reach thing.
It was the lack of pile-in, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but like the thing is, I had to then worry about how I would pile in against that unit because they could issue that command, and then I would have to watch out for it, right?
Yep. I used it, but
I've used it a couple times. I'm not gonna lie. Like I used it with my Hearth Guard when I knew Fight First wasn't gonna get me anything.
What was that one command where it's like you could give a unit strike last if you had like less than 6 models or something? You had to roll under the model count.
No, it was. Don't worry about it. I don't even want to remember that. That was a wrong command. It was like wrong spell. It was awful.
Tunnel Master was fine.
It was in every list.
Fine.
No, Telemaster was bad. No,
I hated it.
No. Telemaster was what? What are you talking about?
So
Because
stupid.
every army should not have a teleport. It was the wildest thing that you could just teleport these like small heroes everywhere. Every army should not have had access to that. That was the
Guaranteed battle tactic.
Yeah, no, not just guaranteed. It completely broke the Ludo narrative because there were some like heroes that were just insanely powerful with insanely powerful auras that are balanced around their movement. Being able to just teleport them casually was broken. You shouldn't have been able to do that.
Yep, agreed. Tunnel Master, I'm so glad it's gone. There's also a persistent rules argument that I don't want to get into right now. Do you guys remember the hunt? Priority targets and prime hunters?
Yep.
I literally just, I think, started playing competitively when that came out. So like my first couple tournaments, I went and like I didn't fully understand this, and so my list was just full of priority targets as we were at the time, and I was just like, what do you mean you get another victory point? Like it was so difficult to work around.
Wait, you mean I can score 5 victory points per turn and you can score 5 plus however many of my units you killed? Okay, that seems fair.
I liked it
rude
in the sense
awakening.
that it was nice of them to try something that wasn't like a direct nerf to the army.
It was an attempt at external balance without changing points. And
I think they realized that ultimately we need to break the barrier and just change rules as we go.
Yes.
But I like that they tried it.
Another one I wanted to put on this list, I think this is my favorite seasonal rule of all the seasons. It was Metamorphosis in Season 0, where you could turn a hero into a monster. That was the coolest thing. I want that back. That should be in the neutral spell lore. It was so cool. It felt so good to do that.
How did it help?
It turned your hero into a monster, so you could gain
Plus
a monster.
counts 5 and gives you a monster.
So you could you could roar. They counted for 5 on objectives. It was super.
My Annihilator list has 0 monsters. I have used this with my Knight Incantor multiple times to try to roar something.
When I was running Bastion in the first GHB, I regularly turned Bastion into a monster.
Yeah. And there were a lot of battle tactics that were based off monsters too.
Yes.
And it was balanced by the fact that if you killed a monster in that turn, you got a victory point.
Victory.
So I thought that was just perfect. I love that spell. I hope it comes back.
Yes.
Beautiful. Any other seasonal rules we want to shout out real quick? Battalions or not tactics or battle plans. We'll get to those.
I quite like Galatian Command. I did not like Galatian Bounty Hunters. But I quite like the whole like the hero fighting with the unit because I think that was very thematic.
Double activating,
I thought that was cool. I wish it was a little more permissive, like what we've seen on War Scrolls, with being like wholly within 16 or whatever. Like in the case of Khorne, I wish it just had a bigger range because I think it was wholly within 6, which felt really, really tight.
I also like the Hero Hunters Battalion, the minimum 3 units that you need to take to shoot something. Shoot a hero.
Oh, yeah. I think that's a good idea for a battalion. Yeah, snipers.
Yeah, I think that's a very, especially now that Lookout Sir is like a permanent core part of the game. Like, I think you should just have that battalion.
I'd be okay with that.
Agreed.
What else did I like? I thought Hunters of the Heartland was not that bad.
No, it's fine.
It could come back, especially if you make rampages more powerful. It would be a good thing to have a neutral battalion that makes you immune to rampages.
Yeah, I mean, you can balance it other ways too. If
Yeah,
it's
I
too
think so.
like okay, like for instance, monsters and artillery and behemoths couldn't get into it, right? Heroes couldn't get into it. It was just units. I think that's fine.
Yeah.
It made you want to have to build your list certain ways.
Would you guys bring back Galatian veterans?
What was that one? The fight in 2 ranks?
Fight in 2 ranks, yeah.
Fight in 2 ranks.
So, okay, I thought I would like that, but the answer is no. I think MSU first. Okay, so okay, I was playing with my friends in Nighthawk with some Blade Guys tournaments. You can get very reliably 8 out of 10 models, sometimes 9 into combat. It's not that hard.
Yeah, it's very possible with 32 mil bases.
Yeah.
Yes, the problem is Nihon is like that army is like pretty movement heavy, so it's like it moves 8. So it's like, you know, like you feel good about that because it's like I can run that in MSU, feel fine about it. It also relies on Wayo Terror, so you kind of incentivized to run MSU anyway.
Totally.
Yeah. My problem is when they design units like Blood Warriors or like Volkite Berserkers that can't do anything unless they're fighting in 2 ranks, that aren't sort of like worth it.
Yeah.
And I think it's more comes down to that unit's design. I don't think Volkite Berserkers can just be a weaker version of Hardcore Berserkers. I think if you're going to design Anvil units, you need to design them that way. I think if you design like Blood Warriors are fine, I guess, because they feel like an Anvil. They do higher murder rolls, so it's fine. Chaos Warriors feel fine because they have an Albert option. They need to change the design of units that can't fight in 2 ranks, but have these like 32 millimeter and like 10 string of 10 models or whatever.
I would rather the game just have it baked into the rules to fight in 2 ranks, and then just balance the units around that. You know, so like if Blood Warriors are going to do too much damage because they can be reinforced, find some other way to lower their damage. Right? I think just being able to use models
like 40K
is more
fighting?
important. Sure. Yeah, I'm down for 40K.
Fighting.
Yeah. Fight if you're within base to base of a model that's base to base. Simple. Like, not being able to use models because of some stupid rule restriction sucks. Coherency changes to 6 models, one of the best things they've done. Right? Like, I guess we haven't even talked about how much of that sucked. We've all just forgotten how much it sucked because the new version is exactly how the game should be.
Yes.
Yep. Especially when they keep releasing these 3 model units in the game.
Yes.
Yeah. Or 6 model now with some units.
Yeah. Oh yeah, because
Questers are 6. Yeah.
I think that rule change was a result of Galatian veterans experimentation.
Yes.
Maybe they don't want hordes to just always fight in 2 ranks, right? I don't know. I'd rather they do, because balance the game around it rather than trying to. People will do stupid things to game it.
It's especially as Stormcast players, because we're on 40 millimeter bases. Unless there's a rule that lets us fight in 2 ranks, there is no reason to reinforce our foot units because they can't fight.
It also makes the game a lot cleaner in really finicky situations. If, for example, we did base-to-base fighting, it's very obvious if you're base-to-base or not. It's far less obvious if you're within half an inch or 1 inch or 2 inch. You have to go and measure these things.
Yeah, there's a lot of arguments there because, like, if you get the calipers out, you can actually fight in 2 ranks with 32 millimeter. It's just that no one would accept it.
Yeah, so just simplify it. Just
not
make
with
it
the 1 inch reach.
You can, yeah.
No, you can. You can. If
you're talking about staggering, right?
Yes.
Staggering or like in a triangle. Yeah. What I'm saying is like if I put it out, if I drew it for you in CAD or something, I could show you that it's in an inch. Is that explaining that to someone feels like you're gaming them?
I've already done all of the trig and math to do that.
Yeah. It's like just make it cleaner, and instead of having to worry about am I having to get the bumping all the models with your little 3 incher and saying, oh look, I'm actually within 2 or I'm actually within 1. Just say base to base.
Yes.
All right. Let's talk about battle tactics. That's my favorite subject. What do you guys think of battle tactics? And I would like to break this discussion up into what you thought of them at the start of the edition and what you think of them now. So
I'll let Jack start with it.
I'm interested to hear what John thinks as the new player.
Sure, yeah. I mean, they were incredibly difficult at first to prioritize and think about what is like the best order that I can achieve these. Should I be like sort of building a list for them?
And that
they
part
were
feels
sort
good.
of haphazard.
I think
they
that
were
part
like
feels
a whole
good.
other layer. I was just excited to be like, at a tournament in play, just like playing with people and learning. But I think part of that though was they were much easier when I started. you know, a year and a half ago, started playing more tournaments, or just started playing tournaments. They were much easier to do. And so as they sort of became more difficult, I started focusing on them much more. And so I kind of reverse engineered back into this idea that I think a lot of players come to the game with, which is like, it is a victory point game, right? Like when I started this game, I was like, oh man, it's a war game and it's fighting and killing. So I'm always trying to like do like the epic things and kill a lot of things and sort of have fun in that way. But it's very difficult to win this style of game if that's what you're focused on. And so as they started to get tougher, and I started to focus my strategy a little bit more on ensuring completion of them, you know, with sort of the ability of making sure I'm getting, you know, at least 2 VPs, 2 objectives, sometimes getting that extra, but not forcing it. Like I don't have to, you know. So the 4-point kind of turns, I started to win more games, right? So I did not really care for them in the beginning, and now I mean they're critical, and yeah, like I lean on them in a way that I didn't before. But it can be super annoying when you just can't do one. And I think Stormcast has sort of faced that a little bit. We're in a much better place now, but a few months ago there were games where I lost because I just could not do one turn, and I lost by, you know, 1 or 2 points. So that was tough.
Yeah. I love battle tactics as a concept. I think that it makes the game interesting. I think that it makes the game dynamic. My issue with battle tactics, and this has kind of been a recurring theme, was consistent implementation. I really, really, really like the battle tactics in this GHB. I think autocomplete battle tactics should be a no-no. I think because I brought this unit, I score 2 victory points automatically. I'm looking at you, Daughters of Cain. Is bad design. I think battle tactics should require you to actually play tactically and plan, and not reward you for bringing a particular unit or doing whatever it is you're going to do anyway. I despise the battle tactics that are pick a unit on an objective, kill it, and take control of the objective. You're already doing that. That doesn't require any thought. So I would like to see the battle tactics continue. I would like to see them be more challenging. I would like to see them require more thought and more planning. But otherwise, yeah, I love them.
So I wanted to know one thing just before you go, Morgana. When I first started playing it, it was very difficult for me to understand why we need to tell the other player what our battle tactic is, because in warfare, like that would never happen,
right?
And like I found that so strange, because imagine if you didn't have to. They would eventually figure out what you're trying to do, but it would really add this cool layer of strategy that I think they're missing out on.
Because from a game perspective, that probably wouldn't be fun. Like, because you're trying to play this guessing game or trying to stop your opponent, but they could like gotcha you towards the end. So, but I understand what you're saying. So I'll add to that, right? Battle tactics were a good concept. I think they started out really good. I think GW decided that they were way too easy. They were auto dues, and people were doing them anyway on their way to like a normal victory. So they were like, cool, make them harder. Then they shot themselves in the foot by making faction battle tactics, and that's like a whole other ballgame. I'm not even going. I don't think they should exist. But so I'm gonna focus on battle tactics as a concept, not going to faction battle tactics.
Yeah.
So secondaries as important, so the game doesn't just turn into primary blocking. So your opponent just doesn't deploy like thin lines of chaff all around the primary and just win the game that way. So I think secondaries are important. But to your point, where like you're trying to achieve this secret secondary thing during a thing, I think that's something you should be doing over the like. I actually quite like 40K's secondary system, because it's not. What I hate about the battle tactic system is you could do all these battle tactics, whether they're faction or whether they're generic, but it's like an in the moment thing, which might not be the strategically sound or the tactically sound thing for you to do. So like why am I dancing around on the board around 4 different board edges when the clear situation demands that I keep my army sort of in a cohesive way together and then try to like do something else entirely? But that's the only one I can do, so that's what I'm gonna do. Like that just seems really silly. If,
Yeah,
on the other hand, we had what I call cumulative battle tactics, so things like you pick your battle tactic at the start of the game. So let's say your battle tactic is secure the battlefield. You need to have troops in every quarter. Okay, you don't need to do that round 1. You're Stormcast. Just do it later, right? And then after that, for every turn that, like, at the end of every turn, your turns that you have each troops in quarter, you can score 2 points for that battle tactic. You can keep scoring. So I would like that a lot better than this like use it or lose it system, because it promotes, in my opinion, like really bad play. Also, really hate the battle tactics that are like you need to keep something within 3 inches of the opponent, which means you have to actively try to not kill them. Which is like,
Yeah.
it's a
Or
war.
be
I am
super
trying
far
to.
away.
Yeah, it's like I am trying to like finish you, like finish off your army. Like, why would I try to keep your troops alive with like stupid positioning? So I don't know. I think secondaries are a good idea, and that's why I like 40Ks, like because they have different categories of secondaries too. There's one where like you have to assassinate enemy heroes. There's one where you have to be in all quarters. There's one where you have to like keep hold of an objective and plant a flag on it, and your opponent has to come back, take the objective away from you to tear down your flag.
But having played 40K in the 10th edition, the sticky, being able to look at your opponent's army, then pick your secondaries for the rest of the game, that then makes disparity between armies really, really,
Okay,
really
but
like
I understand
clear.
what you're saying, Jack, and that's a totally valid point. But how is that any different from what we have now? If a battle tactic was kill a monster and half the armies out there don't have monsters, it's something you could never do anyway. If your opponent, for the same thing, if I had a battle tactic that says cast 3 spells and I'm fighting Seraphon, well, I'm not going to complete that ever. Like that's just not happening. I could
Sure.
attempt it, but that's like a guaranteed failure for me. So it is in a way filtering out battle tactics I can reasonably do against certain armies. Like I would never try the what's that battle tactic? Charge in with a hero and a battle line unit and have them within 3 of an enemy unit.
Let into the
Because
maelstrom.
I wouldn't do that against. Yeah, I would not do that against OBR because OBR has such massive hitting power; they would just kill whatever I hit them with.
Right.
So it's like,
but that's
you are automatically filtering out what battle tactics you can do. I would just prefer it if you just had more control over that, and that's something when you know that you're going to try to achieve in a cumulative manner. It's something your opponent can then try and stop. Like I can't stop my opponent from declaring I'm going to summon the Lord of Change, and I guarantee can do this, and there's jack shit you can do about it.
Right.
But what I do like is, if they have to summon 9 different units over the course of the game, then I can decide, oh, I have to prioritize killing whatever things he has to summon.
The summoning thing.
Because then I can stop his summoning and stop him from scoring max points for that secondary.
Well, Mergonk, what you're describing isn't a battle tactic. It's a grand strategy. Yeah.
Yes.
And
sure, I'm saying like I understand that, but I'm saying like we talk in this like in the wording and the paradigm of battle tactics and grand strategy, but I think the secondary system needs to just be more along the lines of grand strategies that you score cumulatively rather than in the moment battle tactics.
Yeah, like this turn, use it or lose it, and it's sometimes not super applicable.
Yeah, it's like why would I like teleport to board edges and have things in every quarter? Like that's not the wisest thing for me to do. Like why do I just have to have my dude in the corner and cast a spell when I would rather have him up front with his troops? You know, it's just like.
But these are just natural logical conclusions to the concept of battle tactics. So I think battle tactics are like a subset of just the idea of having secondary objectives that isn't just stand on the circles. Like conceptually, stand on the circles is a fun gameplay mechanic, but it runs dry, and there's also some armies that are really bad at it and some armies that are exceptionally good at it, and you need some kind of equalizer. So a secondary scoring system besides that is a good idea.
Yes.
Battle tactics, I think, are just a flawed concept. I don't even think conceptually they're good. I think from the very get-go, and it's not an implementation problem, I think it's conceptually they're a bad idea, and I think I can break down my argument here. And please disagree. I would love to hear counter arguments. For starters, they're either going to be too difficult or too easy. And we've seen that. We've seen both sides now. We've seen some battle tactics that are ridiculously easy, like kill a battle line unit. Okay, I'm going to do that at some point in the game. There's some battle tactics that are straight up impossible to do. If you're playing a wizard army, you're down 2, or a non-wizard army this season, you're down 2 tactics this season. You just can't do them.
Yes.
And that's because the armies in Age of Sigmar are so weird. We have weird armies. We have some armies that are just a bunch of monster truck monsters just rolling around with 4 models. We have other armies that are like 200 models. We have some armies that have 10 wizards. We have some armies that have 0. The difference between armies is so vast, and I think it's a good thing because I like how diverse the armies are. So you can't ever design tactics that work well enough for both armies unless they're very easy. But very easy tactics are not fun.
Boring.
They're just so boring. They're like, this is I picked the thing I was going to do anyway. So cool, give me the max victory points. At that point, they might as well not exist. Because they're just a complexity issue that's getting in the way of learning the game. On the other end, once they become very difficult, like what we've seen this season, they have to create scenarios. Well, what can armies do? Armies can all kill heroes. Cool. Armies can all move. Cool. Can't have any tactics about monsters because some armies don't have monsters. Can't have any tactics about killing wizards because not all armies have wizards. But all armies have heroes and all armies can move. So what do our tactics involve this season? Moving with heroes and killing stuff with heroes. And they're not conducive to an actual battle. Like, let into the Maelstrom.
We're seeing that problem now, right?
Yeah.
Like, we're seeing like the battle tactic that you win by casting one spell successfully cause people to take wizards, even though it's not thematic for their army or the right thing for their army to do.
The battle tactics have become too impactful to the gameplay, and I honestly don't think you can design a system otherwise. And I'm just talking about universal tactics so far, right? Because in theory, if the armies are too weird, then just design army tactics. That seems to be the logical solution to that. But the problem is that because seasonal tactic or because the army tactics, like, you'd have to design a lot of them or rotate them every season. And that's just too much work for too little benefit.
Too much.
Right? And even then, you're going to end up with some armies that... Because that could actually work. Because if your army is weak on stats and bodies, you could have good tactics, and that would be an interesting balancing point. Right? Like, an army like Tzeentch could just be really good at scheming, and cool. Adds flavor as well, right? But I don't think there's ever a way to balance that properly. The amount of work required is not worth the benefit because there's 20-something armies in the game. Like, that's a crazy amount of updating you'd have to do. And then every time battle plans refresh, or anytime you have a battle tactic based off things being on objectives or near table edges or anything, all this stuff gets thrown out the window in terms of balancing because there's a new set of battle plans. So I don't think there's ever a way to design battle tactics properly. Like,
there's an option though. Like, when you just said when the first time this was explained to me, I was like, oh, so the battle tactics are related to the battle plan.
Well,
and people are like, oh no, not really.
That's my preferred solution here. Is that the game needs secondary scoring. Every battle plan in not every battle plan. A lot of battle plans in second edition had secondary scoring built into them, and
did it?
They did, and it felt great. Cool. It felt really great.
That's what I want.
And I think we can go back to that. I'm not going to propose exact solutions here. I'm just going to, review what we currently have. The last thing I want to hit on is the fact that you have to pick your battle tactic at the top of your turn. I think that's atrocious. Because it's a ton of complexity for new players, because there's 14 battle tactics to pick from every single turn, and you have to know all of them in order to pick the right one. Like, this is probably the worst source of complexity, like way more than command abilities and actions and all that stuff. This is like the one wall that I hate the most in terms of complexity. I think players have the worst time with this.
It really matters.
It really does. Because if you in a competitive game, because usually, at the start of the season, it's always a little bit tougher. People are figuring things out and modifying lists. But usually, by the end of each season, it's like, oh, you're not scoring 5 VP, then or 5 tactics, I'm going to win then. Like, yes. If you drop a tactic, it's really hard to win a game. Really, really hard. It's not impossible. You can still deny primaries. But that's kind of just the inevitable conclusion, is that people will eventually figure out how to maximize their score. They'll build lists that don't interact with the opponent as much as they could. They dance around on the edges and create weird scenarios. So I think from start to finish, battle tactics are a flawed concept. But I think we need secondaries. And I guess that kind of leads us into a discussion about grand strategies, right? Because that's pretty much where the secondaries could be in terms of list building, in terms of interactivity. This is what they should be. Like, the current grand strategies we have are not good.
No.
They're not fun. They're mostly just keep your general alive. Right, for most of our lists, that's what it is, because we're taking Spellcasting Savant. All the other ones are
Yeah,
terrible.
I mean, that's where I think like I don't think grand strategy should ever be a part of list building. I think it should just be like in the moment thing. Like
So
because think about it from a battle perspective. If I'm fighting an ogre general, it doesn't make sense that my grand strategy would be the same as when I'm fighting like a Nighthaunt army.
okay, but
Yeah.
if we look at this holistically, because I agree with you, Paul, secondary scoring needs to be a thing. And I will openly admit that the battle tactics that are in this GHB lend themselves to the way I want to play the game. I am all about hypermobility, teleporting, dancing around. I love that style of play. And it shows in my performance this GHB versus preceding it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that absolutely your grand strategy should be a part of list building, because your grand strategy is the way that your army is approaching what it's doing, what it's achieving. I think that grand strategies should be a little more difficult to achieve, but they should be worth a lot more points.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I'm okay with them being 3, like because if they're a tiebreaker, that's cool. But like they shouldn't just be a check the state of the game at the end of the game. You know, like check the state of the board. They should be like a quest that you go on throughout the game. Like at you know, for 2 rounds of the game, maybe not in a row, but like at some point twice in the game, have units in all 4 quarters. That could be a cool one. At some point in the game, have a foot hero on an edge of the table, outside of your territory, inside your opponent's territory, and then remove them from the table. They're slain, but you score your grand strategy. Like they're on a secret mission. You know what I mean? Like you can have so many cool ideas, and these are really underdeveloped. They've always been underdeveloped, starting from the first season where it was like keep a priest alive, keep a wizard alive. And now we've gotten to the point where the best of all of them is keep your wizard general alive. And it has to be a foot wizard as well. The design on these...
be a small wizard, not a foot wizard.
Yeah. The design of these has gotten
be mounted.
worse.
Because the LCAC is the one that we're using.
Yeah,
right?
it can be mounted.
Right.
Yeah.
I think the reason grand strategies have gotten worse is because battle tactics have gotten harder as well. And they kind of just have this idea that people are scoring all of these too reliably. So let's make them harder.
Right.
But none of these are fun. They add nothing to the game. If I'm going to snipe my opponent's general, it's because there's a tactical purpose to it. Like it
takes away from like the war element.
That's why like I would say it again, like 40k system is actually like choosing what secondaries you're going to do against an opponent is actually really cool. Because here's the thing, it also acts as like a soft balancer against the people who spam things that are really oppressive. Like okay, like because we both know, like Paul, we've mentioned this, but we don't think like GW actually tests spam.
No,
like they don't like test with.
I don't think they use reinforce
units. Things enough.
No.
Yes. So we've said this multiple times, and they certainly don't test what happens when I take, I don't know, like 4 Stormhorns with Kragnos or something.
Right.
You know. Now, let's say someone does this. Let's say someone brings 180 zombies. If there is a secondary that for every 10 points you kill, I can guaranteed get a point or 2 over the course of the game. Okay, that solves that problem. Because what I can't get on primary, what I can't get on standing on circles from someone who has 180 models like that, I can now score back by just killing them.
Yeah, I think we've gotten too much into a point where scoring is too reliable and games score way too high. Right? Like most games I play, like I'm usually 25 or more points every game I play. It's pretty rare for me to get under 25. I usually drop.
No, you don't play enough.
Yeah.
No.
Like I've had some wins that were low scoring games.
On Nexus Collapse, sure. But like on a standard game, it's like it's pretty easy to get every tactic and max score. Well, not easy, but it's like it shouldn't be as reliable as it is what I'm saying. And maybe that's their thought process, and that's why they're making all of these things so complicated and weak. But it's like artificial. Yeah. It's not fun. It's not contributing to fun.
That's the thing. It's not contextual at all to who you're playing and what you're trying to do.
They're not intuitive. They're not part of the narrative.
I've always said 40k. Yeah, like 40k has been cheating from Age of Sigmar for a bit. Like you've seen this, like how they've designed their new system with the command points and stratagems and everything. I think this is the one time we can cheat and learn something from 40K.
Well, that and the 2
So
rank
long
fighting.
as we learn those lessons, right? So
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Murgoth,
Yeah.
you keep going back to the way 40K secondaries work, and I think conceptually that would be fine.
Yeah. I'm not saying you
Uh,
can't iterate on it and make it better or have like an Age of Sigmar centric version of it, but yeah.
It would need to be, because like my experience so far with because I play Adeptus Sororitas, is that I bring any Sisters of Battle list I bring, my opponent immediately selects assassinate your heroes and blow up your vehicles, because that army is entirely reliant on its support heroes and its vehicle support, which means
Okay.
that I
Hmm.
just lose because
So,
they focus
yeah.
on blowing those up and then the game's over.
So, okay, hear me out. Like, let's let me see if I can like try to iterate on this. So, I think Sororitas, the problem is, even though I think Sororitas is just a weak army in balance.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I'm not going to go into 40K balancing right now. So, but that's I think one of the major problems of the army. If you know, like, if I'm playing Fire Slayers, I am bringing a suite of 5 heroes. It makes sense for my opponent to try to kill those because they are sort of like the engine of the Fire Slayer army.
Yep.
That's what
Okay.
enables Hearthguard Berserkers. I think it's fine for them to have a secondary to try to kill them when that's what they're going to try to be doing anyway, and my goal is to try to stop them from doing that.
So what if
But at the same time, I am also trying to like do something to them that they might not like. Like this
Right.
might be someone who has like 40 sentinels, and what if I say, okay, what if I destroy like what if I get a point per 10 models or something that you're killing or something?
that would be
Or what if
that would be fine.
yeah. Or you know, sentinels can't take objectives. So if I plant my flag on the objectives, I'm scoring more points, and you have nothing to contest objectives with until like turns 3, 4, 5, because you're focused on killing my heroes. It's like that's what I like that it does. Like it's not perfect. I will never say that it's like the perfect system. It's also quite complex when because choosing the wrong secondary can end you the game. And there are some armies like it just turns certain units off for them. Like right now, the Silent King in the Necrons is giving away 3 victory points because each of his different models count for a different like bring it down or whatever.
Yep.
So I don't like that. So it can be cleaned up, but I think that is the system. Like it should be a grand strategy as part of what you're trying to do over the battle, as opposed to I'm trying to do something in the moment.
I'm okay with the idea of picking it as part of your list building, and I think there's ways to design that properly. I think you could also do it reactively, but I don't know. I feel like that's just too punishing for some armies. Like what Jack's saying, you're gonna inevitably have scenarios where it's like, oh, I'm playing against Gargants, I'll kill monsters. That's my grand strategy every single time. Nobody will ever pick anything else.
Right.
So
okay,
I would like to see.
But I'm saying the Gargants can also pick something, right?
Sure, but
like what are Gargants good at? They're good at killing things. And it's like, cool, if I'm fighting the Horde army,
they're
let me just kill
They're
monsters.
not.
I
Okay.
would like to see the balance set up where your like 1/3 of the points that you can possibly score come from your grand strategy that you pick when you make your army. 1/3 of your points that you can possibly score come from controlling objectives. 1/3 of the points that you can possibly score come from reactive secondaries that you do during the battle. And so long as they're balanced around that these things are achievable but not autocomplete, I think that would be fine.
I'm not sure about your ratios there. I feel like the objective holding has to be the main one. Otherwise, the game gets really messed up. Because if you can just get your grand strategy and tactics and ignore objectives, I don't know if that's like fighting over objectives is the core of the game. I don't think we should get away from that necessarily.
Yeah, I think that should always be 2/3. I think that needs to be 60.
The best player should, in order to get the max score and win in the best way, you should have to consider all 3. I'm down with that. Like in terms of importance, you have to consider all 3. I really think the best way to go is to have secondaries tied to the battle plan. Like a different, like you've got your circles, and then you can score a bonus point if like a locust controls an objective or something. Stuff like that feels good, you know?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
So more of that is what we need. Speaking of which, let's talk about battle plans. I've got my 4 favorites.
Guys,
up top.
I'm gonna hop off.
Okay.
I gotta run.
Yeah, okay.
Good seeing you, John.
That was fun.
Have a good night, buddy.
See you guys soon.
All right. After this, we're almost done. I've got my 4 favorite battle plans up top here. Let me make sure it's showing on the stream. Just slide that over. These are my top 4 from the whole of 3rd edition. I've got Prize of Gallet. And the second one is also Prize of Gallet because Prize of Gallet is just so good. Then it's Jaws of Gallet, and then Geomantic Pulse. Those are my top 4. I I love Prize of Gallet so much I put it twice. It's just so good. And then my 4 least favorite were Battle Lines Drawn for obvious reasons, because I hate anything that stops allegiance abilities from working. Twists and Turns, the most random nonsense, not even fun in casual games. That's how bad it is. Nexus Collapse, just too much stuff going on, too much to think about.
I love that. I love that battle plan.
I can play one Nexus Collapse and then be done for the rest of the day. I can't do multiple games on that level. It's too much thinking. I just dislike it very much.
Okay.
And Towers in the Tundra is the most boring battle plan they've ever released. It's like a starter battle plan.
Yeah. Frigid Zephyr. I think Frigid Zephyr should be thrown away.
It's up there with Battle Lines Drawn. I really don't like anything that restricts your army so much.
Yes.
Like, oh, you brought a cool army? Well, guess what? We're playing the battle plan that says your army sucks now.
Right.
I'll add 2 battle plans to this.
Sure.
Okay, go ahead.
I'll remove your second, which is Prize of Gallet, because it's in there twice.
But it's so good.
It is good. I think it deserves first spot. I think it's a good.
Yep.
I'll put in the 2. One is the Winter Meltwater one, the one where you if you siphon
limited
an
resources
objective for too long.
It's a good one.
Yeah, limited resources. The other one I like is the one where it's like 2 A's and 2 B's, and either one switch on depending on who's
Power
second.
Flux. I've actually really liked that one. The more I play it, the more I like it.
That would be my top 5. Prize of Gallet, the Meltwater one, Jaws of Gallet, Geomantic Pulse, and the what was it? What did you say? Was that the one where the A's and B's
limited? Power Flux.
Power Flux. Yes.
Yeah. Do you know what all of those have in common? They all benefit you for going second in round 2.
Yes.
And that feels great. They nailed that season 0 with that with the Gallet Gur eating objectives. They nailed it, and then they just dropped the ball and only sprinkled it across a couple objectives. That mechanic is awesome.
Copy pasted those battle plans in these new GHBs, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Like they had Jaws of Gallet and Prize of Gallet were like the 2 just really good ones.
Prize and Jaws, yeah, top 3 right there. So good.
Yeah.
I like as much as I like battle plans that focus on mobility and having some objectives on the outside. Like my favorite ones are all about the middle fighting, because I think that's the core of the game. That's what makes the game the most fun, is making tactical decisions. I think 5 objectives are the most fun, because like holding an objective on 5 feels really satisfying. Like denying your opponent score more feels really good. But then I think battle packs also need to have objectives that are on flanks, that are far away. Mm-hmm. Because if you only have stuff like Prize
3
and Jaws,
in the middle, Gargans will just stay on 2. And
I despise the 3 objective battle plans. I get what you're saying, Paul, and I know that is the way that you like to play the game. I really like 5 and 6 objective.
I love 5.
Plans.
My 3 favorite maps are 5.
One,
5 is my favorite. I find 3 very boring.
Geomantic Pulse is like the exception, because it's 4.
Yes. It's 4 and they move, right?
They move.
Yeah. They move.
I love battle plans where you are encouraged not to actively not engage with your opponent, because there's like literally nothing going on. They had a lot of these in 2nd edition. There was like the ones where the stars fell down or something and you had to control them. I love those. Like those feel really good.
The comets falling down on the either side of the board. Yeah.
I love stuff like that. And I
Realmstone Cache.
That was a bit much. There's too much randomness
I think
there.
it would have been fine if there wasn't any center objective. The center objective made it a little weird for the first time.
Yeah. Towers in the Tundra, as much as I like Power Flux because there are 2 objectives, if Power Flux was only those 2 objectives, it would be very boring. The fact that it can just switch and be the home objectives, that's what makes it interesting, right? The only problem I have with Power Flux is Battle Regiment is really favored there, because you want to go second all the time. And if they change that, it would have definitely made it onto my top 4 here.
Yes.
Nexus Collapse, I have a couple problems with. Like I said, there's too much thinking. There's too many possible paths that can happen. It's also really bad if your event ever uses VP-based scoring, because it's usually just a race to the bottom. People will just constantly burn objectives. And you'll have some people who play and they'll go like, 25-28, and then 2 other players will go 11 and 10 because they've just burned all their objectives.
I get what you're saying. I think Nexus Collapse would have been better if it was just the person going second burns an objective.
Sure. There's 6 objectives,
Yeah. Burning 2, I think, is too much because
It's
I've
too
literally
much.
seen a game between pros on this, and all they did for the first 3 turns was battle tactic, and nobody took an
Yep.
objective.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then turn 4 rolled by, and everyone just scrambled for every objective they
yeah.
possibly could.
This battle plan actively encourages you to not control objectives, which is against the core gameplay that I was talking about, which is stand on circles and kill stuff. And then it's like you should have variations on how you stand on circles and kill stuff. Another thing, I will say the one thing I like about Nexus Collapse, the 6-inch objectives, or like the table edges are within 6 inches. What am I trying to say?
Vanguard Hunters.
Yes, Vanguard Hunters.
Yes,
The objectives
yes.
are all within range for outflank maneuvers, which feels great. I
which
like
feels
battle
great.
plans.
I love that.
Pulse is
I
really
really
good for
like
that
the
too.
one that was
Yeah,
remember the
agreed.
one that was in, I can't remember, this was like last GHB, where it was like 2 half objectives on the flanks and then 2 home objectives.
Yeah.
Y'all remember
Because
that?
they
Yes.
were on the very
They
table
were
edge.
on the
yeah.
edge
Yep,
of the
yep.
table.
And
Yeah.
if you contested them with Galatian champions, you would get an extra point.
Yep.
Yes, that position over power. That's what it was.
Yes,
Yeah,
position overpower. I think that was a good one. I think that's a good contender for like 6th place.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if Tunnel Master didn't exist, I would agree.
Yes.
Tunnel Master made
yeah,
that
of
one a
course.
joke. I hated Tunnel Master.
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
Okay. So I think what all these have in common is going second is good. Battle plans
Yes.
encouraging you to not just stand on objectives, but stand on objectives in interesting ways is good. Battle plans where random stuff happens or too many things can happen, like Nexus Collapse, twists and turns, those are bad. Battle plans that restrict armies in
Nexus
some way.
Class is good.
I don't like
No,
it.
I like Nexus Class.
Okay, fine.
You don't.
like
I get it. Why you don't like it?
I
don't
yes.
think any TO who has an ounce of empathy should put this as round 5 in a GT. This should always be like round 2. So you
Yeah.
have a warm up game and then you get this
Yes.
over with.
It
But
should
yeah.
always be round never. In my opinion.
The event that I designed the pack for was a 3 objective plan, a 6 objective plan, a 4. I think I did Geomantic Pulse as the 3rd game, and every single one of them did the whole person going second controls something,
They feel the best.
and it was, and they feel yes.
I like 6 objectives. Like Fountains of Frost, I actually think is pretty good. It's not good enough to like make me want to play it all the time, but it's a good enough battle plan. I love long deployments more than anything else. Like Ice Fields and Fountains of Frost feel really good for that. Pulse too, Geomantic Pulse is good for that. I like long deployments. It makes speed and mobility matter a lot more.
Yes.
But at the same time, I also like these like center scrums. So I don't know. They're both good. Okay, so let's cap it off with a review of the edition like we were ranking a war scroll.
Yeah.
So pros, there's more reactive gameplay, and the reactive gameplay feels good, right? As much as, these systems aren't perfect, they're all complex and they add a lot of complexity. Heroic actions could be a bit better. They feel really good. Like, the game is fun at its core because of reactive gameplay. Monstrous rampages make monsters feel different. They're not just a single body with the same wound count and lower damage than other units. Like they actually feel like, oh, that's a monster. I got to play around that. I have to remember that it does things, which is good. They properly defined wards, strike first and strike last. We didn't really talk about how much of a problem that was in 2nd edition.
Yeah.
Oh boy, was that a mess. Really glad they fixed that, and I'm hoping they do that for some other abilities as well. In general, army identities are a lot better. Most armies feel a lot more flavorful. Even if it's not necessarily the right flavor, like Fire Slayers, maybe they could have gone a different direction. Most armies feel a lot better. Like, it's hard to explain to people who didn't play 2nd edition that they really standardized a lot of things. There wasn't a lot of difference in armies. It was like different flavors of the same thing. It was like, which kind of vanilla ice cream do you want? Do you want the kind that has strike first and strike twice? Or the kind that has shooting? But ultimately, it's still not that different, That's not a great analogy, but it's late at night, so whatever.
Yeah.
Primal Dice, huge win. Primal Dice, I think everybody likes. I have not heard a single complaint about Primal Dice, except the people who just Primal miscast every opportunity possible. Like, oh, there's a 1. I better add a Primal. Let's go.
No, I think that Tzeentch players and Lumineth players have a legitimate gripe about Primal Dice.
I agree.
But that has to do with their army design. not primal dice themselves.
Yeah, their army has been designed around the way Magic worked since 2015, and that system needs to be updated. So I hope they take some lessons from this primal dice mechanic, because it's just a win. It really just plays well. It's random enough, but controlled to a certain degree, and I hope they just iterate on it. They just give me more primal dice next edition. We didn't really talk about this, but second edition was a lot more Mortal Wounds. I know there's too many Mortal Wounds now, but second edition was a lot more, right? Like, it was crazy how many Mortal Wounds are going out. Armor didn't matter. Like, it just didn't. Having a save roll was all, like, unless you had Destiny dice, it just didn't matter. And armor matters a lot more now, which feels really good.
Yes.
Maybe not enough.
I think Mortal Wounds need to be scaled back a little bit.
Just a bit, because you never want no Mortal Wounds, right? Like, the game needs things to die, and Mortal Wounds fill that role as a very accurate and reliable source of damage.
Right.
Secondary scoring systems, that's an improvement. Just having them is an improvement, I think, over second edition. I don't think they've been implemented particularly well, but rather than having it only on battle plans, I like the idea of grand strategies existing. I like the idea of battle tactics. I'd rather have them on battle plans, though, honestly. So that's a mixed one. I don't know. We talked a lot about that, though.
We did.
Endless spells. We did not talk about endless spells on our discussion here, but they primal dice aside, I think endless spells were really good this edition. Like, they felt pretty cool. Especially when they stuck around and got multiple turns. Like, I loved Purple Sun when it was auto-killing things. That was so fun. You know, and now we've got Blizzard auto-killing things, basically, and it's conceptually the same thing.
I have to quickly go.
Okay.
I'll talk to you guys later.
See you, dude.
Later,
Have a good night.
Good talking to you guys.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, what do you think about endless spells this season, Jack? Or just this edition?
I think that they have gotten better. I understand your love of Purple Sun. I hated it because it always killed my heroes. But by and large, I wish that there was a little bit more emphasis on balancing the endless spells a little bit better.
Yeah.
We tend to only see a handful of them each GHB. And certain armies always take the same ones, which I think is not fun.
Yeah, I would love it if they were all cheaper across the board and all of them were about as powerful as, like, the Pendulum or Maelstrom. Like, yes. I want them to be cheap and powerful because you're giving up units and you're giving up spell slots and you're still having a chance to fail, and they can be dispelled and unbound. Like, there's so many checks that you're going through, and then it's like, I'm paying 90 points for this? Like, what am I doing?
Yeah, agreed.
You know?
Agreed. Right.
So.
I think Maelstrom's maybe a bad example. I think the new version of Maelstrom, the one that got FAQ'd, is much better.
Yeah, I think it could have stayed 30 points, though.
Sure. Yeah, like, as it is now, where, because it sucked to be like, oh, okay, so here's this Maelstrom, and there's literally nothing I can do about it. I'm just going to die.
Yeah.
That was not a fun play experience.
Pendulum feels a lot better, right? It's
yes,
sufficiently random and short range, but the armies that can take advantage of it by boosting its range or teleporting into range, those feel good.
Yeah.
And 40 points is the right point cost for that spell.
Yes. Agreed.
The one big change from spells is that they used to be a double turn deterrent because they would move at the top of the round regardless of whose turn was taking place. And they changed that now that they move at the end of the hero phase. So there's always a chance to get rid of them before they have a chance to activate again. And at first I wasn't okay with that at the start of the edition because I like it. I like it now because they're less. There's other things that can be deterrents for double turns. So I'm okay with them moving that out of endless spells. I think the new Lookout Sir is a big win. Like, I wish I could still shoot heroes, and I think maybe it's gone a bit too far. But the alternative is that at the top of round 1, long strikes kill every important hero.
Right.
And that's just not fun.
That's not fun.
Yeah.
Right. I agree. My issue with the change to Lookout Sir was that the change to Lookout Sir was probably necessary, but it came after armies that are reliant on their support heroes already have ways to protect them.
Yeah.
Because a lot of those really important foot heroes now have bodyguard mechanics.
Yeah.
So even if I could shoot them, I couldn't kill them anyway. So it felt a little unnecessary. I also, if we're going to have this mechanic in the game, which I think is good, then certain units need to have the ability to circumvent it. Because, like, Doralia Van Denst has no purpose in the game now. Because she can't shoot wizards.
I
That's
hope
like her
it's,
whole shtick.
Yeah, I hope it's really limited, though, right? Like, I don't want them
Yes,
to go
agreed.
crazy with it.
Agreed.
Very specific units should be able to get around it.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah, on a case-by-case basis. Yeah. And maybe it should be like a turn-based thing, too. Like, so, like, round 1, maybe you can't shoot them within... Unless
That's
you're within
fine.
9, and then turn 2, it's 12, and then 15, 18.
12,
like
and then,
that,
yeah, sure, whatever.
Like, some kind of fog of war thing. Like, it's getting easier to see the leaders,
Sure.
you know? Some kind of thing like that.
Yep.
Rerolls have mostly been removed. And that's another thing we didn't talk about. It is mostly good, right? Like, casting rerolls in particular stuck around for a long time. I think prayer rerolls are okay, because prayers are kind of in a weird point where they're just... Because it's just a single D6 system, it's like a +1... I don't know. Like, it's hard to design +1s around that. So rerolls make more sense there. I think we could bring back some rerolls, though. Some armies should reroll. Especially, like, elite armies like Stormcast, OBR, Caradron.
Sure.
Armies that are like, no, they're the best at this. So why are they hitting, like, a skeleton?
Yeah.
You know, like, why is this... Why is it...
I charged my Dracoths in, and oh look, I rolled 7 1s, and so they're totally pointless this turn.
Yes.
Yeah, on a limited, again, right? Just like the assassination thing, I think on a case-by-case basis, a limited amount of rerolls being in the game are fine.
Yeah.
Where we don't want them is you're rolling 60 dice and then re-rolling again. That just is not necessary.
Yeah. Because when you only have D6 dice and you're on hits and wounds of even on 2s, your max about 70% accuracy. That's a huge failure chance. And that is too much to feel good as an elite army, you know?
Yeah.
Agreed. It's just too swingy. So I would like, maybe it's because we just don't want to get rid of randomness. I don't know, but I think it's a flavor thing. Like, elite units shouldn't hit the same as a guy with all-out attack.
By and large, 40K has gotten rid of a lot of reroll mechanics, and they've baked them into very specific unit abilities or army abilities, and I think that's okay.
Yeah, I might not go as far as 40K, but
no, not at all.
Yeah,
but I think that's a better, some middle ground between none and some is fine.
Assistant ref, I agree with you. Reroll 1s is less problematic than full rerolls. I think if you're on rerolling 1s, that's totally fine.
That's totally fine.
I also think there should be a thing that a reroll counts as a triggered effect, so that if you're rerolling, it doesn't like you can't reroll into a 6. You know what I mean?
You're not fishing for 6s for the mortals or whatever.
Yeah,
yes,
maybe
agreed. I love it.
That could be a balancing point. Like, it makes sense. Like, oh, I missed with my long strike. The idea is that you reroll a 1 to get a more accurate shot than what a 2+ would normally give you. It's not like, oh, I missed, but actually I hit you in the head. Like, it curved, you know? Like, that doesn't make sense. So I'd be okay with 2s rerolling 1s, and then that counts as a triggered effect.
Yep.
All right. Oh, rerolling save rolls? Never. Never again. Never, ever, ever. Save stacking or rerolls. You can't have both, right? So... rerolling wards is stupid. Like, get rid of that from Soul Blight. I don't understand why they can reroll 1s. That just slows the game down.
Yes.
Yeah. Like, some limited reroll saves and wards, never. I don't think those should ever be rerollable. Well, not never. Very rarely, let's say. Okay. Army of Renown. We haven't really talked that much about these. They offer alternative playstyles, and it's, I think, even if they're very weak, right? Like, the Draconeth Skywing, weak. The Fireslayer one, probably the worst one, honestly. Yep. These are all really bad. And they should be bad, because it shouldn't be the best way to play the army. But they are a different way to play the army, and that's super cool.
Yes.
Like, Stormkeep is not a great allegiance ability, but I like that it's different from Scions, so that there isn't just the Scions of the Storm playstyle. And now we have this Draconeth Skywing playstyle that we can do as well. The game needs more stuff like that. There shouldn't, because it's kind of hard, because if you don't introduce rules that push you in a certain direction, you inadvertently push players in a certain direction because they optimize and they figure out what that direction is, right? So you have to have strong enough abilities that incentivize people to build armies in certain ways, but not so strong that they eclipse
It overshadows. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Agreed.
And I think the Army of Renown have done that because they're weak on purpose, but they're not pathetically weak, right? They're not unplayably bad. It's like, if you're getting, and especially because they just put out that article where Matt Rose was saying, like, no, we know on purpose we're designing them to be weaker, and if they're too strong, we'll nerf them. Like, they nerfed the Grunhauler one. They're probably going to nerf Broad if it gets too popular. Like, I'm totally down with that. Sylvaneth has a big problem where they are just the teleport and charge army, or they're the Tree Lord army. And what if you don't like those? What if you just want to play Kurnoth Hunters and Bugs and like move and hit stuff? Like, you couldn't do it. So yeah, great, big win for them.
It's fine.
Downsides, battle tactics. We talked to death about this. We're not going to rehash that discussion here. Terrain rules
are
bad.
Terrible.
They're very bad.
They're so bad.
I have to house rule every single game I play because terrain rules are bad. I have to say things like any terrain over 2 inches is just impassable. That way there's never an argument about whether or not I can charge up or down a wall, because that's very poorly defined. Mysterious terrain is so weak that people just don't use it. Even though the rules say you have to use it, people are like, nah, it's too much effort. Not enough benefit. Sometimes Wildwood are on the table. Sometimes they're not. Also, Wildwood, you have to be 3 inches, like, there has to be 3 inches of Wildwood between you and your opponent, where it could just be, it just blocks line of sight completely.
It just blocks line of sight. Yeah, there's, up here in the Northwest, we have all pretty much agreed to 2 garrisons, which cannot be deployed within range to contest an objective, 2 Wildwoods, 2 Impassables, and then 2 generic pieces. And it works really well. I like it. But the terrain rules need an improvement.
The mysterious terrain as well. Like, it could be stronger. Sinister sucks. Inspiring sucks. Deadly sucks. Change them. Make them like impassable, block line of sight, and I don't know, +1 hit or -1 hit or something. You know, like, give people reasons to play around and not be around terrain. That's all we want. We want the models on the table to matter. And cover needs to be easier to get. Good lord, cover is so important. So many tables don't have enough cover.
Right.
Auras, bodyguards, and fight on death are not properly defined, and there is constant debates about these. And I was right about pulses. I was right the whole time, and I'm super stoked about that. But I would like these things to just be baked into the rules. There's no reason. I understand they're trying to avoid keywords. I understand they're trying to keep the game as accessible as possible, and these are good goals. But people can see things like a ward or a pulse or a bodyguard, and that could be the limit. It's not like every unit's a bodyguard, right? Like, you look at a unit, it says bodyguard, you're like, oh, this is the one unit in my army that's a bodyguard. What does that do? I can look at the core rules, which are free online. So
yeah, I want them to adopt the keyword system that they've added to 10th edition for this sort of stuff, so that it says it is an aura. It says it you know, like that kind of, it is a bodyguard, right? Just clearly define how that mechanic works. Stick it keyword on the war scroll. We're good.
Yeah, where 40k goes too far is they have things like critical hits, critical wounds, devastating wounds, lethal hits, lethal wounds. Like, there's too much in 40k.
That's too much.
Yeah. Like, I'm fine with them having hit rolls of 6 cause 2 mortal wounds. That doesn't have to be a keyword ability. But, like, imagine if flying wasn't a keyword ability, and you have to write fly. This unit ignores models in terrain while it moves.
Yeah, I know.
There's some things that can just be special rules, and that's okay.
Yes.
Okay, I really hate battle line drawn, as you can tell, because battle plans that punish army traits should not exist.
Should not exist.
Flat out.
Should not be in the game. Yes.
Yeah. If you're going to have something like ice fields, which I don't think punishes any one particular army, don't make it D3 mortal wounds. Make it 1.
Yeah.
One mortal wound is enough. Don't make it punishing. Yeah. Grand strategies, I think, are not
We've
pushed.
talked about it.
Yeah, we talked about it.
They need to be better, more impactful.
The game is still very lethal. And I think this is less of a problem. Like, stuff has to die. So I don't ever want to get to a point where you're just grinding things out constantly over objectives. And there's still a lot of room for defensive play. But I think there's just a few instances where things are just dying too quickly. Like maybe there might be a couple extra points of rend or some extra mortal wounds, or like there's skew things that happen, and I think the game could like it just remember when Thunderbolt Volley was usable with reinforced, and you'd be like, okay, top of round 1, that unit is dead.
Yes.
That sucks. And that's
Yes.
still that can still happen in the game. It doesn't happen top of round 1 from 30 inches away anymore, but there's a lot of times where it's like, especially with shooting and magic, it can happen. Like I feel like the game is very close to having the right amount of balance of damage and wounds and all that stuff. It's just tilted a little bit too much towards damage in the last like year. For the first half of third edition, I thought it was good.
Yes. The power creep and the lethality of the game has started to get out of hand.
Yeah,
absolutely.
They just pushed a little too hard. Like, bring us back to where it was before the Gitz Battle Tome, and I thought that damage output was fine. Even Lumineth.
Yes.
Lumineth were accurate, but not high volume, and I thought that was fine.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Core battalions, or sorry, sub-factions and enhancements. We didn't really go into this. They're too weak across the board, right? Like, there's so many trash artifacts and spells and command traits and sub-factions that it's like, it's not that interesting to... You don't get excited about this stuff, and I feel like players should get excited. It's like... But you don't want to go too far, right?
Some of this has been corrected in the more recent books, right? Especially us looking at this as Stormcast players. Our sub-factions are a joke. Our army rules in general are bad. But like, I like the idea of sub-factions changing how the army functions and what you bring. I like that.
I agree. And I think the worst offender is something like Cities of Sigmar, where I don't think there's any battle line options. You're literally just picking which battle trait you want. It's like, do you want Misthaven to move, or do you want Hallowheart to actually cast spells?
Yeah.
And that just feels awful. Like, there's actually no flavor baked into your thing. Like, second edition Cities of Sigmar was so full of flavor. God, I love that book.
Yeah.
And now it's so devoid of any kind of fun, you know? So I would like to get to a point where sub-factions and enhancements are just better. Enhancements, like, why do armies have 5 out of 6 choices being complete trash? Why does that exist? Like, I know Stormcast enhancements are bad, but this isn't this is just us.
But in general, the enhancements by and large are not very good. Inevitably, an army has one enhancement that is excellent and it takes,
and the rest
everything
are
else
trash.
gets ignored.
Like they're not even like, oh, this isn't optimal, so I'm going to ignore it. No, they're just bad.
They're bad.
Yeah. I don't understand why they designed the game that way. Enhancements are fun. Give us a reason to take more Warlord battalions, and also make it easier to take more Warlord battalions. Like, list building could be more fun.
Yes.
I'd like it to be more fun.
Yes.
Core battalions, they suck. We talked about why they suck. Seasonal ones have been an improvement, and the trend is good, so hopefully 4th edition pays off on all that experimenting. The 2023 power creep was really bad. It honestly made me think about quitting until 4th edition. The game was in a really miserable state. Every book was just more stupid nonsense, and it was just not fun to play. But they've corrected it, so I can't really complain too much. It mostly corrected. There's still some nonsense, but the game's a lot better off than it was 3 months ago. Some armies only got a 3.0 battle tome less than 1 year before the new edition. Yeah, how great do you feel picking up your Cities of Sigmar battle tome, knowing that in 6 months there's going to be a huge set of errata to bring it in line with whatever the new rules are?
Well,
like how do FEC players plan on getting their army, knowing that everything's going to be thrown out the window in a few months? Like, that just sucks.
That will entirely be dependent upon how radical the change is in 4th edition. If 4th edition is a slight refinement of what we have for 3rd edition, I think it will be okay.
Like, I'm not saying it won't
be a massive change.
They could be compatible, but it's not fun to play a current edition with an old edition book
Yeah,
because
I
you're
know.
just it feels like you're just chopping things together and they're not you're kind of making it work, but it's not meant to work, right? And that doesn't feel good. I really think they need to either release indexes, which would be my preferred thing, or really just by the end of the first year, every army should have a battle tome, and then you spend the rest of the time, I don't know, adding stuff to the game. Like that would be perfect,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But the fact that there's some like Soulblight at the end of second edition got a battle tome, and they were kind of like a weird, like one of the worst armies, right?
Right.
Because they just didn't work with the new rules. The armies that got updates in White Dwarf were busted for the most part. Armies that had really terrible rules just kept getting point cost decreases. It creates so many problems to not have a current edition battle tome.
Yeah, well, and I talked about this a lot early on in third edition. If you are going to do a staggered release of armies over the course of the entire life of the edition, that's fine. But then at the start of the edition, before the edition even comes out, you have to decide what is and is not going to be allowed, what mechanics you can and cannot do, and hold to that through the entirety of the edition. Otherwise, we end up kind of where we are now, where the battle tomes are escalating,
Yeah.
and for the most part, each battle tome is outdoing the other one, and there's this massive spike in power level.
Yeah, and I think they were doing pretty well on that front for the first year. It seemed
Yeah.
like they designed a big batch of battle tomes all together, and then they designed a second batch, and that second batch
Yeah.
was just better.
Was just better. And now the third batch is even better.
Well, cities, I don't know. Cities is
We'll see.
yeah. I think there's going to be a lot of errata.
Probably. There's one of the things that I've noticed is the more an army book diverges from the core mechanics of the game, the more errata and FAQ they have to do to fix that.
Yeah.
And I get it, like having cool, unique abilities that do different things and break core rules are fine if it's done like in a very limited way and very carefully.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It could just be a lack of playtesting, honestly.
Yeah.
Because they did fire all their playtesters after the Slaves book got leaked.
I know.
Okay, and the last thing,
And it's the Incarnate, which
the
we all hate.
Incarnate. Everybody hated this thing.
And we're gonna get another one
because it breaks the core rule of the game, which is stand on circles and kill stuff. When something doesn't die, that breaks the core rule of the game. Things have to die, right? It just has to happen. And if you're guaranteed to survive at least one round, that's strong.
Right.
But then you have stupid things like Tzeentch making it auto-wild, Cities of Sigmar making it auto-wild.
Yes.
Rupture.
Yes.
Good God, I'm glad they fixed Rupture as soon as possible.
Yes.
Kronspine has been a terrible blight on the game. I'm glad that it's mostly extinct now because Rupture is actually now killing Kronspines more than it's helping them.
And it's points. Like why? Like obviously they wanted to sell a bunch of those kits, and we get it, GW. But like, please don't break our game by trying to sell models.
Assistant Ref, I've been a fly on the wall for the Kronspine thing. Who on earth thought it was a good idea? Was it a higher up? Was it marketers? Was it the designers themselves? From a lore perspective, the Kronspine is a huge win, right? If you actually look into what Kronspines are all about, their backstory, what they should be doing, the fact that they're not
incarnates.
They're not
incarnates.
They're not living things. They're like mana. They're not even endless spells. They're more than endless spells. They're like the realm itself is made manifest. So it makes sense that you shouldn't be able to interact with it in the same way you'd interact with it as a physical being. Like you can't kill an endless spell. You have to use a wizard or a priest to dispel it, right? So like that I think is what they were going for, but they really missed the mark, right? There's so many other ways to handle that sort of thing rather than just literally being unkillable. Like Croak, I think, is a better example of that. Croak is not unkillable. You pour enough damage into him, he auto dies. Whereas the Kronspine, no matter how much damage you pour into it, it just always survives. There's no roll required. for it to live. Like, and then you get bonus of like, oh, you didn't do the 18 damage. Oh, there's a chance this gets even worse for you. You know, I don't know whose decision it was. It feels like a lore thing. Maybe in situations like that, you just don't let this thing into match play. There's a lot of models you can't use in match play, right?
Well, I think the what and I anticipate, given the direction that they are going with the armies of renown, that when we get another incarnate, because we are going to get another incarnate at some point, it should be good, it should be fun, it should be almost prohibitively expensive in points, so that you don't see it in, like, every army doesn't take it, because the problem that we had with the incarnate was it was so efficiently pointed, literally every army took it.
My most cynical theory is that they made it ridiculously overpowered on purpose so that they could sell terrain, because
Agreed.
they've been pushing selling terrain in Age of Sigmar all edition. They have been trying to get as much money as possible from that, and that's my most cynical take, is that it was made overpowered on purpose so that they could sell terrain.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Okay, downsides aside, I think Age of Sigmar 3rd Edition has been really good.
Yeah.
Ask me 3 months ago, and I would have probably given it 1 or 2 tiers lower. So maybe it's like a contemporary thing, but you know, they fixed it, so how much can you really complain? I think it's an A tier game. I don't think it's S. I think it has the potential to get really, really good.
Yes.
But overall, it's in a good state. I'm having a good deal of fun playing competitive matches and casual matches, just playing whatever random fun list I throw together. Like I'm going to be doing probably Chariot spam on Tuesday with the Guardist, just holding everything in place with Charged Mortals. It's the mechanics feel good. Tactically, it's a satisfying game. There are some pain points, especially battle tactics, core battalions, balancing issues. But overall, the game feels good. Armies feel good. Decision making feels good. It's a satisfying and enjoyable experience. So it's hard to make an objective ranking, obviously. But I think it's A tier. If that means anything, I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's good.
Yeah, it feels like
I
you're.
agree.
You know, if you had a plethora of games to choose from, you're picking Ionis Cryptborn. You know, it's not perfect, but it's good, and it's cool in the way that it's good.
Agreed.
Okay. So that live stream was a lot longer than I thought it was going to be. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in and sticking with us as long as you guys did. Hopefully this has been fun and or interesting. Jack, thanks a lot for sticking around all the way to the end.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Mergonk and John, for coming on. And thank you, chat, for tuning in. If you guys have any other thoughts about 3rd edition, what you thought about it, just let us know in the comments. We love reading those. I'll be checking up on them for like weeks. I read every comment everybody posts, so let us know what you think. And with that, we'll wish you guys a good night, and we'll see you in the next one.
Everybody.
Okay, that's it.
Awesome.